Hi folks. So we'll be doing a little pack review of the latest pack that's been released by the design team for the realm. And here we have the release article that was just posted last week on this website. I will link this release article in the description, and we'll be going through each of the cards in order and have a little bit of a discussion about how the cards may be used in decks and in actual games, and what new synergies and new options they could potentially give players. And I'm joined today by one of the people who has done most of the work in releasing this pack, Stephen Patane. Welcome, Stephen.
Hello. Hi. Happy to be here.
Okay, so if you're ready, we can actually, first of all, I recommend to everyone to read this article. It has, it's written a little bit more from the thematic point of view, rather than mentioning synergies and stuff like that. But as you will see, there is a new keyword introduced in this pack, and I think this is actually the place where we need to start, because a lot of the cards, I think something like 9 or 10 cards do have this keyword, so that we don't introduce it each time.
Yeah. So people know what we're talking about when they see this new word.
Right. So the word is assault. It was siege before, for those who have followed the design process on ThronesDB from the start when the cards were first posted. So the siege was originally the name of the keyword, but it caused some confusion with the trait that's present on some cards, especially now that this is basically focusing on armies. So there is a lot more siege stuff upcoming probably. So it was changed to assault, but then, of course, people will need to stop referring to assault from the shadows as assault now, because that's potentially another confusing thing.
A small sacrifice we're happy to pay.
Actually, I wasn't happy with calling it assault. I mean the agenda, assault from the shadows. Calling it assault at the beginning, I preferred shadows, but then Kingdom of Shadows was released as well, so that was not an option anymore.
Yeah, I'm surprised people don't call it AOS, like KOS for Kingdom of Shadows.
Yeah.
But AFS, sorry, I thought from Shadows.
Then KOS you confuse with Kings of Summer.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So
Too many.
I just call Kings of Summer when I do notes about the games I played.
But then you're confusing a trait and a character and an attachment.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay, so Salt has changed a little bit throughout the design process. Basically, the idea always was to blank locations in the challenges phase and possibly nil locations, but then the order of things was changed slightly, and the targeting restrictions was changed a little bit even at the very end. Now you need to have a character present for the location to be nailed. But okay, I can just read this paragraph, basically the first one that you can see here, because that's the basic definition that you need to know, and everything else is basically just explanation. So assault is a keyword ability. When a character with assault is declared as an attacker in a challenge, that character's controller may choose a location with lower printed cost controlled by the defending player. The chosen location is considered to be targeted by assault. Till the end of the challenge, treat it as if its printed text box were blank except for traits. So basically, this is done in the stealth window as part of initiating the challenge. You choose an eligible location, and then that location is blank until the end of the challenge. I will just scroll down here to show you the timing.
Yeah. And it's very interesting being able to blank. It's almost like an on-demand nightmares just for every single challenge. It hits quite a few locations. and yeah, we had to really get the window timing, as you're going to show here, really on point for a lot of different reasons we might get into later.
Yeah, it's a little weird because it lasts. It lasts until the end of the challenge, but the kneeling part happens or doesn't happen if the defender wins the challenge a little bit before that. But as you can see here, the challenge a timing chart. So basically, this step 4 to 6 challenge ends. This is after keywords are resolved. So in the duck sequence, it's the very last thing after K, after keywords, the challenge ends, and that's the time when the blanking stops. And there is, I don't think there is currently any way to, once a location has been blanked, to stop it being blanked unless it leaves and re-enters play. So this is, once it's blanked for the challenge, and then when the challenge is over, it is it has its text again.
Yeah.
And then the other part, so unless otherwise stated by card ability, only one location may be targeted using assault in each challenge. So this currently doesn't really do anything. There are no card abilities that would allow for an additional location to be targeted, but who knows, maybe at some point.
Future-proofing it.
Yeah. When a player wins a challenge in which they control one or more attacking characters with assault, any location that was targeted by assault in that challenge is knelt. So this is a little bit different now because you need to have an attacking character at this point in the challenge, and it doesn't matter. It's not really related to the process of initiating the challenge when the assault target was chosen. You can introduce a character, have it participate at some point later in the challenge, for instance, with something like Greywater Watch. You can have an assault character participating later in the challenge, and even if the original character was removed, this location will still be knelled because a character with assault is still present. This is a little bit complicated, but in reality, the character that chose the location at the beginning of the challenge will almost certainly always be present when the winner is determined as well, so it doesn't matter that much. But just in case something weird does happen, characters being removed and then other characters being introduced. Well, characters being removed can happen. Obviously, you can burn a character or remove it from the challenge to save the location from being knelled, basically, or prevent, I should say, the location from being knelled. But having different assault characters participating later is not very realistic at the moment.
Yeah, I do like this though, because it does allow you for a little bit of flexibility if your opponent is getting rid of those, especially now that there's currently not too many characters with assault. If your opponent is, taking care of that one character, you still have options to keep that control of that location, if you have the cards to your disposal. I think the example is actually a very, very good one to explain that scenario. I think it's Dagmar, Cleftjaw, and Foam Drinker.
It's this paragraph here at the end. So basically the scenario that happens here that explains assault is if you declare, we'll get to the Iron Fleet later obviously when we're looking at the cards, but it's a card with assault. So the Iron Fleet chooses a location with assault, and then it chooses the wall, and so the wall is blanked, doesn't provide the plus strength to Night's Watch characters, but the defending player doesn't want the wall to be knelled, so the defending player removes the Iron Fleet from this challenge.
Or Nightmares then, yeah.
Yeah, Nightmares is used in this example, so it removes the assault keyword. So now there isn't a character with assault present at the point when the winner would be determined, so the location wouldn't be knelled and the wall would be triggered potentially at the end of the phase, giving 2 power. But the Greyjoy player can put in Foam Drinker, as you can see in this example. Foam Drinker is another new card that gives Dagmar assault, so if Dagmar was also attacking in this challenge, he now has the the assault keyword, and even though he wasn't the character that initially targeted the wall using assault, he is now still present at the point when the winner is determined and the challenge resolves, so he will still kneel the wall.
Yeah. It's quite interesting.
I think that's possibly the only interaction like that is even possible at this point in time, because I don't think there are any other cards that give assault. Although it is possible to have a character with assault participating with challenge with tricks. I think Stark can do that.
Yeah. I think this is good though. I think this is one of the most complicated possible ways of switching assaults. But I'm glad it was an example.
Yeah, and I think this will be important as well, this very interaction, to keep the wall from being knelt, because obviously you want it standing. But I think I've seen some panic about this. This will destroy wall decks forever. But we heard that way back when what was that neutral character with the intrigue icon that discarded locations in dominance? Some sort of pyromancer.
Pyromancers, yeah. Yeah, I think when we
no more wall decks after that, but it didn't do anything basically. It was a useless character.
I think it's a very, and we'll probably get to this later, but I feel like it's a very silver bullet sort of keyword, where a lot of times it might not actually do anything, but when it does do something, it's definitely doing something. It's impacting the game, in a big way. But it also, as you'll see when we review the rest of the cards, you need to pay a hefty price to be able to kneel some big locations.
Yeah, all the big ones are 8 cost in this pack.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's have a look if there's anything else that's important here. So, okay, this point explains that the target is chosen at the same time as stealth, and then if you have the Crown Regent melee title and you redirect the challenge, the same rules apply. You can do new assault targets. The blanking we've already explained, and the other thing about kneeling as well. And this last paragraph currently does not matter because these abilities do not exist. So if there was this cannot be nailed by assault or cannot be targeted by assault text on a location, this obviously is basically it's self-explanatory. So we don't need to discuss it further. So this is the new keyword. I guess time will tell. We've heard lots of different opinions how this is possibly overpowered. It will ruin location-heavy decks, but my opinion, basically from the start of the playtesting process, has been that it's not all that great because of the timing. The locations that trigger at some point after the initial action window in the challenges phase are not that common, and they can mostly they can do their thing before that. But you can get some good targets for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the cards. We're going to start with the neutrals to show you obviously the cards Evrank news and the new agenda. But I think we'll start and finish with this plot. We'll discuss the reason later. So for the realm, plot is basically very simple. It simply says reduce the cost of the first army or stronghold card you marshal this round by 4. So this is an economy plot that is useful with the new agenda that I will show you next. But basically, if you use the reduction, it's an 8 gold plot, isn't it? So everything with 7 plus in this game, I think, has some negative condition that you need to do, like sacrificing character or giving some advantage to your opponent, or there is some kind of condition under which you can use the gold, either for instance a noble cause, you need to spend some of it on a lord or lady, or Lions of the Rock, the Lannister plot, you need to use it in the challenges phase because you don't get it immediately in marshalling and stuff like that. But basically this one to me looks pretty simple unless you've made some terrible error in judgment when building your deck, or if you're really unlucky with the draw, you should be using this on your army, shouldn't you?
Yeah, definitely. And the full reduction on any army, it's going to hit a lot of possible targets for each faction. Obviously, as the game goes on, the more armies that are ever added with, I guess, 4 or more cost, this just gains more and more value. But when we will get to the agenda, I guess when we talk about that next, it's very clearly going to be just a staple opener, I think, and a useful one at that, because you don't really, as you just mentioned, you don't really get a lot of positive 8-1-1-6 plots like this would be if you're getting maximum efficiency out of it. But yeah, it's very simple. I'm a fan of it.
And also the 1 initiative, it's not great, but it beats 0, so beats the gates and
beats the flavor of the month of at the gates.
Yep. Ties for the maiden, I think.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so we'll talk about the stronghold part later, because you may be thinking there aren't any, or there aren't many of these strongholds that can be used. I'll just show you. So let's see, search for the stronghold right here. As you can see, there is the wall, it's 4 cost, the Eyrie, it's rarely used, and the 2 Heron Halls are the only targets currently that can use this entire reduction by 4, but we'll talk about this at the end a little bit, because we'll be seeing some more strongholds in the future. But let's have a look at the agenda. So as you can see immediately, the trade restriction, your plot deck must be exactly 10 edict, siege or war cards. So this is the problem with the agenda that stops you using any of the economy cards, basically like the Many-Faced God, which blocks kingdom plots. They're all kingdom, all the plots that give decent gold, let's say 7+, are kingdom plots, but for the realm has the war trait, so this is the one plot that can be used, that gives you a little bit of gold.
Yeah.
So let me just explain this quickly. You can use any combination of these plots. It doesn't mean you need to do 10 plots with the same trade. I don't think that would even be possible.
Yeah, I don't know if there's that many. There might be that many, you just won't have a very good deck.
Yeah, you could find edicts, I think, but not the others.
Yeah,
so you can use any combination, but only these cards. So originally, if you followed the design process, well, actually, the original agenda was something completely different. It gave, I think it gave some plot phase immunity to an army.
And I think you could choose it at the start of the phase. You could give them immunity.
Yeah, and the assault keyword. So you had a choice. Either you did it in challenges or in the plot phase to protect the big armies. And then I think it possibly had some trade restrictions as well. And then it was this mechanic of revealing plots in the challenges phase was introduced, but at first didn't allow edict plots. So this was added because simply from siege and war you couldn't really build a versatile enough plot deck.
Yeah, we realized every deck was, as you just said, like it was just the exact same plot line with siege and war. You needed some variables in there, and edict helped with that.
And they had that game plan basically flip into something to claim retaliation, or maybe the desperate attack for 3 claim.
Desperate attack, yeah. Well, that's what. Yeah, that's what got me. Honestly, is the most exciting part about this agenda to me, at least, is flipping into things like retaliation, desperate attack. My favorite, reinforcements. This agenda allows you to use those plots that, I'll be honest, half of us probably forgot existed. You can actually use it, and it's quite viable here because you're avoiding the major downsides of those plots if you play your cards right.
If you're not collecting income doesn't really hurt to have 1 gold on something like reinforcements.
Yeah.
Reinforcements. So let me read this reaction first, and then we can have a look at the different plots that exist. So after claim is applied for a challenge in which you control an attacking army or commander character, kneel your faction card to reveal. And then you have a war plot if it's a military challenge, an edict plot if it's an intrigue challenge, and a siege plot if it's a power challenge. There are a couple of plots, I think, not that many, that have multiple threats, and you can flip them in different challenges, but mostly. So what do you do with this? What do you think? Do you focus on one trait more than the others and expect to flip into new plots in that particular challenge, or do you do a mix?
So I think it varies from faction to faction, especially like what your game plan is. And I've tried quite a few factions with this one, especially lately. With factions like Stark, for example, they love to have more war plots because they can easily win those military challenges and flip into something impactful. I do think there is a good mix of war, edict, and siege plots that you would sort of want in every single Battle of the Trident deck. So it might be good to just have a few in there. But usually, I feel like it actually does depend on what challenge you know you can win. In a lot of scenarios, it's military, but I know for some factions like Martell, intrigue is very, very viable. And others at siege as well. So I think it's a mix, but it will also be very dependent on your challenge types.
And the comparison we've seen a lot was with the Reigns of Castamere, because it has the same mechanic, but I think this one plays a lot differently, because Reigns, basically, some decks, like you could play, for instance, Greyjoy back in the day. Greyjoy Reigns, just put all the high cost characters, Euron and Asha, in, and you had the option of triggering the agenda, but basically if it never happened, it wasn't a big deal, because you didn't need to trigger those plots. But here you are stuck with them, because they're the same plots that you reveal in the plot phase. So you have 10 of them, sounds like it's an advantage, but then the trait restriction, if you do put something weird in that you're expecting to flip in the challenges phase, like a desperate attack, and then you're stuck with it in marshalling, not in the plot phase, I mean, it's not that good for you.
Yep. And it's there is also a very clear thing that should be pointed out. It is, I think it's similar to Cohort. It's a reaction for after claim is applied, not after winning the challenge, which is, I believe that's different from Reigns.
Yes.
And that, I think, was a good choice, because it means that you can't just flip it from a 1 claim plot into a 2 or 3 claim plot for like a military challenge, because a lot of the war plots are the ones that will have the high claim you're flipping into. So it won't. I don't think this will just be an aggro deck. I think it actually is more of a I guess a special tricks deck, being able to jump in a 5-cost character from your hand or discard pile with retaliation, or if you're going second, flipping into desperate attack and regaining some power back with intrigue or power challenges after you flip from winning a military challenge. So it does definitely play differently from Reigns, I feel.
Yeah, and it's a good selection. There won't be the same 10 plots in every deck for sure.
Yeah.
I think obviously not having access to Omen plots and a few of the others, I guess you can find a scheme plot or something like that everyone maybe is worried about during a game. It is a huge disadvantage, because the opponent knows that there won't be any Morgulis, there won't be any Duharis. Basically, you're stuck with just Wildfire Assault. At least now with edicts as well, you do have that political disaster. That's the one I was always relieved before the edict trait was added. I was relieved to see that it wouldn't be revealed ever in that particular game.
Yeah.
But now you can do that surprise if you like. Not sure if it's realistic for these decks to play Political Disaster, but okay.
Yeah, I think if there was one or two plots that I'd like to point out with this, it would that I feel like are a bit of surprises. I think that siege preparations is also a good one to point out. Winning a power challenge and flipping into that to then draw up until your reserve value in the dominance phase is pretty huge, because you're not stuck with that 3-1-1 stat line, 3 gold, 1 initiative, 1 claim. You can do whatever you want in the plot phase and then flip into it to draw yourself a bunch of cards. I think that's another one that I feel like I'll see in a lot of Battle of the Trident decks.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's good as it is, but especially if you can get past the downside.
Yeah.
That's one of the sieges that stands out immediately. Then you have the 2-claimer here, a city besieged. Needing allocations if you reveal it later, maybe it's a little bit too late, but it is a 2-claimer. And then possibly fortified position is another one. If you're doing big armies with just strength, the text maybe not that important to you. And it has the war trait as well, so a lot of the siege plots have the war trait, so you can flip into them in the military or the power challenge. Let's have a look
some of the
at
edicts.
Oh, okay. Let's have a look at the edicts.
I'm also looking through, and I was just looking at Muster the Realm as well. I'm glad that Edict was added so that could be played in this deck too. Surprised that doesn't have the war trait, to be honest. But raising claim when you're attacking with army characters, it's a good one to start. Flipping the plot phase, sorry, and obvious synergy with a lot of the armor characters that you're having.
Yeah.
And, sorry, you were going to go to war as I cut you off there.
Not a problem. I'm looking at the edicts right here. Nothing, I think, in the way of economy plots really here. You can get a 6 gold one. You can get supporting the faith or feast.
Fallen from favor is available.
A fallen from favor, yes, to sacrifice a character. It's a great plot, but for this agenda you do need to think a little bit about what you're going to do with this, I think.
Yeah.
And then Forced March can do its thing in the challenge space, probably not that useful to you. Barring also the Martell plot, obviously. We'll talk about Martell a little bit when I read the last paragraph. And Heads on Spikes, of course.
Yes.
Always useful to reveal. And March to the Wall. So March to the Wall didn't have, I thought it had the war trait, so this wasn't available before, but this is one where doesn't matter if it's after claim. You can, if you do a good, for instance, a 2-claimer, and then you flip into this, that's another character gone. So I think that's going to be probably a staple in Battle of the Trident decks.
Yeah, I do feel like there's a lot of interesting tools that you just don't really see nowadays, and it's unfortunately because I feel like it's because of the stats on those plots. You'll be able to see it here. The March to the Wall is a different scenario. You see a lot of March to the Wall, but that just adds to the bag of tricks here. Yeah, I'm really excited for it.
Return to the Field is also nice.
Yeah.
It's one you don't mind having in the plot phase. Okay, let's have a look if we missed anything with the war plots. Okay, so immediately Storm of Swords, obviously. It's not a 2-claimer, but additional challenge if you start with claim 2 and then you have another one. Always strong.
Yep.
And the 3-claimer Desperate Attack. So you can avoid it in the plot phase, you can time it to your advantage, but if you can do it, you are stuck with it eventually because you don't need to reveal all of your plots.
Yeah. With that one, you'd still want to go second, I believe, to avoid your opponent from getting a claim raise on you.
Yes, unless you completely destroy the board.
Oh, of course, yeah.
if you can get reclaim and just wipe it.
But that's what I was mentioning before, where because it's a war plot, you would have to flip it during a military challenge. So unless if you can do another military challenge, say with Khal Drogo, for example, that could work. But if you're flipping into it mid challenges phase, you'd only really be able to take advantage of the intrigue and power 3 claims in that scenario.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. So
Yeah.
might not see it that much.
But I still think it's an incredible choice for second player. I know it's a staple in pretty much all of my Battle of the Trident decks, and it hasn't let me down so far.
Okay, I haven't tested it yet, so we'll trust your judgment there. And just here at the end, I can see, obviously we've mentioned Wildfire Assault, but the 2 Greyjoy plots, so Greyjoy has both in-faction plots.
Yep.
Rise of the Kraken, not that useful to flip into because you're missing one of the unopposed, but it is a 2-claimer. And then we take Westeros, probably, well, there are raiders that are also armies, I think, so that's not too bad.
Yep.
Okay, so, and then the last paragraph, then it says, then choose a plot card in your used pile, remove that card from the game until you have exactly 1 card in your plot deck. So this is after you trigger the reaction and reveal a new plot. You are forced to remove one of the plots you now have in your used pile. So you can tell us, Stephen, why this was added.
So there was one problem with testing Battle of the Trident, and it was Martell. More specifically, it was very efficient with Host of the Boneway and other general Martell used plot tech when you were essentially able to put 2 cards into your plot deck at the end of a turn, or by a single turn. I think the major issue was that Host of the Boneway, being an army itself, was fueling the agenda, and the agenda in turn fueled Host of the Boneway, and it was just an endless cycle of a lot of unfair play. So this was brought up purely to for it not to just completely replace Wars to Come. Otherwise, if this was giving you used plot bonuses, there'd be no reason to play. Well, no real reason to play Wars to Come over this, because Martell have a lot of decent armies. 2 of them with actually 3 of them now with intrigue icons. Yeah, so basically just to keep one faction in check, but I think it was a good call.
Yeah, and they start with an additional plot with since Edict was added with the best as well.
Yeah.
So this looks a little bit complicated, but it's not really. So the order is when you trigger the reaction, you reveal the new plot. You do when you reveal the ability, if there is one, and then the last thing that happens is you remove a plot from your used pile, and it says until you have exactly 1 card in your plot deck. So basically, what this means is, and keep in mind that there won't be, you won't get to that point in every game because you have 10 plots, but if you get to the last one, so when you reveal the penultimate plot, which leaves you with only 1 left in your plot deck, the others that were removed from the game, if there are any, all come back to the used pile, and then when you reveal the last one, you will get them back in the plot deck. So you cannot really do any weird tricks by having plots permanently removed with this mechanic. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna mention, we almost forgot to mention that this entire agenda also works with commander characters. When focusing a bit on armies, there are also quite a few commanders that now can utilize it, just to open it up a little bit. Thought it might be good to add. I don't think every faction has a commander, but I think most of them do. There's also Vargo Hoat, who's a very useful commander.
Let's do a quick look here. So sort this by faction. Yeah, so most of them have. Tyrell doesn't have one, and there are 2 neutral ones. There's also Septon Ut. But yeah, the two factions that don't get an 8 cost army in this pack do get a commander, so
Yep.
they have the chance of an equal chance of triggering this agenda.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah, but certainly the commander trade is something that has been talked a lot about recently, so there might be more just characters that are commanders, or possibly even ways to give the commander trait by attachments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the new agenda. So of the new agendas that have been released by the design team, we've seen 3 companies. We've seen the Manifest God and Amamur's Farce. They haven't really dominated the game that much. Amamur's Farce was used in the Champions of Westeros League very successfully in Greyjoy, and the Manifest God we've seen in Tyrell with those unpopular synergies, and 3 companies we haven't really seen. What do you think about this one?
I don't think this will completely dominate the field, at least not yet. I feel like it's going to take a little bit for people to find which factions this works in the best. It is going to work in some more than others, but I also think that once, like as time goes on, if more Edict, Siege, or War plots get released, this only gets stronger and stronger. And I feel like eventually there will be a point where this is a very strong agenda. I don't feel like it'll ever be overpowered, specifically because of that Edict, Siege, or War restriction. A smart player versing this deck can already think about what to expect when they're versing one of these players. So I think it'll be a very interesting flavor in our mix of Game of Thrones. Hopefully, hope to see it in some tournaments soon.
Yeah. We'll see. I think it's possibly it's kind of a trap here. If you put just all the armies and the commanders that you can find in this deck and try to do something with that, we've seen that plan basically fail in the Conclave before, or other agendas that are based on traits. You do need, depending on the faction that you choose, you do need some synergies from that faction, some basic game plan, pre-existing game plan, apart from just having armies and flipping into plots. It doesn't really do anything by itself that's that great.
Yeah, a smart deck builder can use this plot to make their deck interesting. I don't think you should ever be relying on this plot to win your games. I don't think that's the intention here. But I think it can definitely make things interesting and spice things up.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think the next card we can look at is Squire. So this is a very simple one. It just has a marshalling action. It's a reducer. It needs to reduce the cost of the next army or knight character you marshal this phase by 1, by 2 instead if it's printed cost 6 or higher.
Yeah.
So this is
it's great haul for armies and knights.
yeah. It reminds me a little bit of Hot Pie actually. So Hot Pie was a card that never saw any play because it's a 2-coster that reduced stuff by 1 and didn't have any other use because of the icons. And this one is a 2-for-1 if you're not having if you don't have a 6-cost character. So I think you possibly need to have a little bit of a higher cost curve for this. But also, let's if you look at this, so it's army or knight character. This doesn't only work with the new stuff; it works with the knights as well, and that's those decks already exist and are pretty strong in some factions. So but it doesn't have the trait itself, unfortunately. Squire.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting decks this can fit into just naturally, and I think the fact that we wanted to be very careful with releasing a reducer with a military icon. because it's generally just very efficient having a chart that can also that can defend that military challenge and also be used as economy. But I think this balances that really well by, as you just mentioned, reducing it by 1 or by 2 if you have an expensive deck. It'll slot into a lot of decks that need the economy. I think that's good.
Yeah, I think 1-for-1 was a little bit too dangerous because the 1-cost characters quite easy to put into deck. They help with all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Improve your setups, stuff like that. So.
And even with battle,
much safer.
Yeah, and with Battle of the Trident as well. As you were looking earlier, there's not too many high economy plots available, so this guy will slot in there very easily to help you with that economy too. And yeah.
Okay, so this one is not very interesting, but it is useful. So let's have a look at the other 3. So we have a little bit of wildling stuff also in this pack. So first of all, Harma Dog's Head, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yep.
So she is a wildling character with pillage. And she has a reaction after a wildling character you control discards a card using pillage. Search the top 10 cards of your deck for an item or weapon attachment with printed cost 2 or lower and put it into play. Shuffle your deck. So this one is interesting. I was reluctant to, when building decks for playtesting, I was reluctant to put her in any decks because obviously it immediately screams free folk and wildlings and stuff like that, and I'm not really interested in that. And then I tried her just by chance in a Baratheon deck that had Long May He Reign. That's the attachment that you put on kings and they can't be killed. And I needed to put all the kings in, including Mance Raider. So if you put Mance Raider, you put a few of the wildlings as well. And I just tested this as well, basically just by herself in a non-wildling deck, and it was surprisingly useful to find non-neutral items or weapons. I think this one looks like a free folk card, but really what you're looking for is maybe the infection items or weapons, because she is completely fine by herself. She has printed pillage and there's no restriction. Any card will do. So when she pillages, you search top 10 for something like Lightbringer or Warhammer in Baratheon, and then if you've timed the keywords correctly, you may still use that Intimidate or Renown after the pillage trigger happens. And I think just by looking at these traits, I think Targaryen was the one that stood out immediately for me as the faction that has cards with these traits that can possibly be used, item and weapon. So what do you think about this one?
Yeah. I think I had very similar thoughts to you. When I first tested Harma, it was in a full wildling deck, and like it does work very, very well with werewood bows, being able to fetch them and then bring them into play, or water dancers swords. But I think you're right. I think that this is more of a card that'll actually be slotted into faction decks when they have quite a few items or weapons available to them. I can see it being used in cohort decks or Valyrian Steel decks. And yeah, there's like now if I was just having a look at the items or weapons that you could put in. Each faction has quite a few available to them. Like I think the least is Stark and Baratheon. Both have 3, and they're all fairly useful. And as you're right, Targaryen definitely benefit from it the most. I think it's a key card in decks that want to be using those attachments. You definitely want to see Harma. As you said, she works with herself with no issues.
Yeah, she can find lots of stuff, but I think the ones that can trigger immediately, those are the ones that are the most interesting to me, because the Baratheon ones, Lightbringer and Warhammer, they give Intimidate and Renown can timing works out really well for those, and I think there is some Renown in And insight, is it in Targaryen? I think there was one.
Yeah.
Dragon egg
They have
gives insight.
dragon egg. Yeah.
And was there one with renown? Warrior's Blade.
Pitfighter Blade. Oh, and Pitfighter Blade apparently.
Yeah, so you can
There
get
you
to, if you've timed the keywords correctly, because you could, in theory, process renown before you do pillage, if there is renown on the board. First player decides that, and then if you put an attachment that gives a keyword that has already resolved into play, you can't go back to that, so it's wasted.
Yeah. I do think that even for ones that don't give you a keyword, for example, I still think it's quite huge. For example, like I see Pyromancer's case you can pull out of your deck. Dawn for Martell. You've got minus picks for Night's Watch. I know it sounds very small, but that's just free economy that you're putting onto the board. Like there's a bunch of really surprisingly useful. You're fetching a free card. It's always good. But I think you're right. There's specific cards that it works the best with, and you like to see those.
Okay, so she has limit twice per phase, works with wildlings that have pillage. We can have a look at that. Sort this by faction. So there is wildling horde, and there is 10s currently are wildlings that have pillage, and I guess brave. What does she say? Wildling character. So you need a wildling character in order to trigger this. So you have 2 non-uniques that work with this, and then the other card that we still have in this spec works as well. So Magnar of 10 is a title attachment. You cannot find it with Harma's trigger, unfortunately. It goes on unique wildlings and gives them the lore trait and pillage, and then has an interrupt when attached character would be killed. Sacrifice another wildling character to save it. So this is one that I put in that deck that I mentioned as well. To put on Mance Raider, have a chance of saving him. That deck didn't really work, but there were some surprising synergies that I found to be quite useful. And this one, not that bad, because if you run into Morghulis, not only do you get to save your high cost character that you really want. I think in wildlings, mostly Mance Raider is the one that would have power on him, because he has renown, and maybe the guy that has intimidate, what's he called?
Tormund Giantsbane?
That's the one, yes. So that's the one you might want to keep, or there are 2 6-costers that are quite useful as well. So you save those, but then you sacrifice another character. So if you have another reasonably important character that would also be killed for Morghulis, you can just choose to sacrifice that one, and both survive. And no limit, so this is usable then even in the challenges phase or multiple times. But you do need an army of wildlings if you're going to do that, because you're losing them.
And if you're not sacrificing your big wildlings and you want to focus on chud characters that you don't really care about, there aren't too many that are available. Like I see Wildling Scout is probably the most prevalent one that you'd usually see, but then you start seeing some other wildlings that you don't usually see in those decks, like Northern Refugee, Wildling Bandit. If you're running a Night's Watch deck or a now the redesigned Free Folk can have wildlings from any faction. Gilly is also a 2-coster. You're sort of deciding whether you want to slot those characters in to save your big wildling character, or you just bite the bullet and get rid of everyone else. I like this card though. It allows you to play those big characters like Mance, which you never see, and keep them as a threat, which is important.
Yeah, because previously there weren't really any saves for wildlings unless you got a duplicate for a unique character, because they can't take bodyguards, and there are no no neutral saves that really work with that. You can do the healing expertise in something like a free folk deck, really. So it's a little bit of luck in those decks. They like to put the pressure on with high claim military, and then if you run into a reset and you don't have saves, difficult to come back.
Yeah. There was an interesting combo that I did run into with this one though, relating to Flea Bottom, Mag the Mighty, and a Wildling of 3 or lower, where you Flea Bottom them into play. You win a challenge with Mag the Mighty, and then when you choose to kill this character, you sacrifice the other Wildling to save it. Mag the Mighty, the rest of the condition won't trigger, so your opponent won't have to kill someone, but at the same time, you've just gotten a 11 strength military challenge in for essentially free, where you paid no cost, no damaging costs, which is what Mag is all about. That was a very interesting interaction I saw with this too.
Yeah, always nice when you can cheat Mag.
Yeah.
Some decks that do that quite nicely. Even in, I think I saw it in Martell in one of the tournaments maybe 6 months ago.
I think I know the deck that you're talking about. Is it a Quinton deck maybe? I think there was a Quinton Prince that was promised deck, like 6-cost Quinton. It was all about killing him over and over again.
Yes, I think it was the Prince that was promised, but I think my opponent chose Mag the Mighty as the Prince on that occasion.
Ah, okay. Yeah, there you go. That also works, yeah. With off to Goldtown.
I think that's it for the neutrals. Oh no, we have 10s as well. So this is a non-unique wilding character, and it is an army as well.
Yep.
With assault and pillage. No attachments except weapon. And then it has basically a negative text. It says ThronesDB cannot target a location using assault unless each character you declare as an attacker has the army or wilding trait. Which obviously in free folk you will have if Karma works in various factions to fetch in-faction items, weapons, stuff like that. This one may be not that great outside of free folk. I think you... Well, but still, even if it's completely blank, I think 3 for 3 with 2 icons and pillage, and even if you are not doing assault, it's still a decent enough character.
Yeah, and even then, you can always just attack with them on their own, and that trigger or that allows them to trigger assault. Like that's also just useful. And really, going back to Battle of the Trident for a moment, it also fits in that deck too, because if you're just attacking with other armies, they still work, even though they're wildlings. You have that, you're meeting that condition with the army attackers.
Yeah, and everyone that has assault is an army currently as well, except for Dagmar can gain it through other means. Yeah, so this one quite interesting. Pillage as well, so works with Harma. It's cheap enough because the Wilding Horde is not really that great with that. But yeah, just you don't basically need to commit to challenge to win it. So I'm thinking if you have to declare only wildlings or armies, and if you're not playing free folk, maybe this doesn't do that much because it can't push a challenge through. But you're right, with assault sometimes it doesn't really matter. You just need the location blanked for a period of time to be able to trigger some stuff.
Yeah,
could be situations like that. Okay, so we'll see what this one does. See if Free Folk comes back. It's not really been played since the redesigned version. But 3 cards that support it here, so maybe someone will give it another go.
Yeah, I think Magna and Thens will see the most play in that deck now. Dogs, Harma may be a 1 copy of. One thing to quickly point out with her is she won't be targeted for first snow. Is that it? Yeah.
Yeah.
The 3 cost or lower returning to hand. First snow of winter. So that's always a good thing to see.
Yeah, they do struggle a little bit with that sometimes.
Yep.
And she supports the new cards support, the Magnar supports the high cost wildlings as well, so slightly easier to build with a higher cost curve.
Yep.
Although you don't get any infection economy, so stuck with those ocean roads and king's roads basically. Okay, so we can have a look at the factions. Shall we start with Baratheon?
Yeah, we'll go in alphabetical order.
So everyone has this 8 cost army now, and the two of the factions got one earlier in the game, so they've received other stuff in this pack. We can see which one is the best. I think they're all pretty well balanced, so it will be interesting to see what happens. So King Stannis' host is an army that has, so they all have the assault keyword. This one has renown as well, gives Stannis stealth, and then during power challenges each participating character an opponent controls gets -1 strength. So basically this ability has been similar from the start of the testing process, but it changed a little bit. It used to work on only on defense, and then sometimes it was -2 strength and or -1 and then -2 if you controlled a king character and something like that. And now it's just changed to a constant -1 strength in each challenge, whether you are the defending or the attacking player. And if you're playing it in a melee game, it works on the other players as well, so you might it just gives everyone -1 strength.
Yeah,
which I'm sure they would
just a little added benefit. Yeah.
So this one supports the theme of not losing power challenges in Baratheon, and it stacks with other stuff. So this for me will be interesting to see if it brings some of the old cards back. So we have Kingswood, which is a first cycle card that was always a bit of a joke. It gives -1 strength to characters when you are defending a power challenge, but then as soon as you lose it, you have to sacrifice it. It sacrifices itself, so it never saw any play. And we'll talk about the possible new interaction with Summerhall in a couple of minutes. And then there was also Stannis. Of the 3, I think that's the one that received the least play over the years.
Yeah.
That also gives -1 strength to all characters during power challenges, even your own. And this stacks with the army, so if you could potentially get a bunch of these effects, it would be impossible to push anything through. But of course, this one doesn't have any negative abilities. It will stay on the board, it won't sacrifice itself, and there's no penalty for actually losing a power challenge, even if it just causes the opponent to commit.
Yeah, I think this is good to see as well, because you're right, you don't really see any of these power reducing cards anymore. Well, really ever, just because they weren't really good enough, I feel. But this, along with Summerhall, which we'll get to in a moment, I really do feel like this will help that theme, which has been lacking from our lovely stags. And another, like the stealth that Stannis also gains, it can't be ignored too. Granted, that's going to help with any of the Stannises, even the probably the best one. I think the 7 for 7 Stannis.
Yeah.
But when you have that and you put Lightbringer on him, he's very, very hard to deal with. And with these power challenge reductions, Barrow's just going to be winning every single power challenge, I feel, which is sort of fair considering how long they haven't been able to.
Yeah, so you have lots of tricks if you really want to prevent the opponent from ever winning anything against you. You can do Traitor to the Crown and Red Keep, some plots possibly, Shireen, the 3-cost one. So there's lots of tricks if you really want to do that. And just the strength basically on this, if you compare it, well, it has 8 printed already, but then if you compare it to core Robert Baratheon, he gains strength for each kneeling character. So for instance, you initiate a challenge with him, it's 5 strength. Opponent defends with 3 characters, and suddenly it's 8. And this basically works in a similar way, because any character that is declared gets -1. So basically, it's as if this had additional strength, like Robert. And the 4-cost Marjorie, I think, as well works in a similar way. And then so on a big board, when there are let's say those huge power challenges with 5 or more characters participating, it makes a lot of difference. But also just potentially bringing characters to 0 strength, because that makes them unusable in that particular challenge. I think that's also useful. And if you want to Voltron Stannis, can be done. I think he can just about gain all the keywords now from various sources, all that exist. It's a little bit difficult. He has to have his sword and his warship and this host.
Yeah, give him renown, stealth, intimidate. Is there anything that gives him insight?
No, but the other 7-coster has draws when you win a power challenge.
There you go.
It's basically the same thing.
Plus immune to opponent's events. That's also looks like a keyword in a way. Maybe not.
Not technically a keyword, but yeah.
But yeah. And the renown is always good on King Stannis' host.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, this one with no attachments, not really a Voltron target. You cannot, for instance, if you're playing Kohor, you cannot stick attachments on it. But maybe in an aloof deck with that 8 cost.
Oh yeah,
not bad.
Yeah, I think it fits nicely into an aloof deck. Yeah.
Okay, then let's see what else we have in Baratheon. So we have the Holy 100. This is the 7 army. Also has assault, but so this is a smaller one. Remember that assault is dependent on the cost of the printed cost of the character with the keyword. So this one can target locations with lower printed costs. So anything cost 2 or lower. Which, to be fair, there are lots of locations like that, so it's not a problem. But some locations do avoid this one. And the text is quite simple. Each the 7 character you control gets +1 strength. So it has printed strength 1, but in reality it's already 2 just by its own ability. And printed strength 1, of course, is something the 7 decks like, because they have the character that stands other characters with strength 1, and they have the crown, is it, that prevents them leaving play. So very useful. And I feel like this, along with the Bonifer the Good, who was added in Forgotten Heroes, I genuinely think that Baratheon can have a very viable the 7 deck now. Having 2 or 3 Holy Hundreds out on the board with Bonifer as well, you've got 4 characters there that have insight and plus 2 or 3 strength, depending on how many Holy Hundreds you've got. It's a board that, it's very difficult to beat. I really like them. I like their assault. You're right; it doesn't target too many things, but it's at least there. You can hit something with it, and yeah, I can see them getting. I feel like it's going to open up a new deck. I hope. Yeah. So Bonifer, I think, was one of the most disappointing. Oh, wrong button. Sorry. The most disappointing characters when it was released, because the deck that he was supposed to go into didn't really work, wasn't really playable, because the infection characters with the 7th rate weren't there. You had the Kingsman, which does something completely different. It's a kneel card, not a very efficient one, so why would you put this in the 7 deck? And then you have Davos, which obviously he's unique, so he can be on the board, just the one copy, and then Bonifer himself. So those can gain insight, but now there is a fairly cheap non-unique character, so you could have 2 or 3 of these, and all of them with Bonifer have insight. You could attack with 3 characters, draw 3 cards for that. So it's pretty good.
And bundled with the 7 plots that were released in Hear My Words, like there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with the 7, especially in Baratheon. So this should really spice that deck up a little bit.
Yeah, so you have a plot that prevents them leaving play if you time it correctly, and then the other good one is the Warrior, which increases claim. It has great stats for a 2 claim plot. If you're playing a dedicated 7 deck, and you can make sure that you will have the 7 character participating.
Yeah.
And kneeling attachments to kneel locations with the Smith, obviously, also good. I've just played against Bara Fate Militant deck a few hours ago. It was pretty tough. Lost quite quickly, actually.
Yeah.
But it, to be fair, it didn't play Bonifer. It played some of the non-unique synergies. It had the Hollow Hill and Ango with the Archer, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then my favorite card of this entire pack, Summerhall. So this one, short and sweet, just says, while Summerhall is standing, cards cannot enter or leave play during power challenges. And that does, for such short text, it really impacts a lot of things that happen in a normal game.
Yep. It's a very simple but beautiful card, in my opinion.
It is.
for what it does affect.
It's really versatile. You can play it. So if you just search for the obvious stuff, the forced reactions in Baratheon. Let me sort this by faction. So the forced reactions, this was a theme with Baratheon back in the day. These are mostly cards from, I think, from the first and second cycle. Kingswood, when you lose the power challenge, it sacrifices itself. White Raven sacrifices itself, and Long May He Reign is another one. They all have the same forced reaction. After you lose a power challenge as the defending player, you sacrifice. Well, actually, White Raven and Kingswood sacrifice themselves on attack as well, but Long May He Reign only as the defending player. So these cards, if they are on the board with standing Summerhall, they are basically immune to those forced reactions. They stay on the board, and suddenly those White Ravens, that's the one I like. There was just a tournament recently where we tried these cards for the first time, and I played this basically a White Raven dominance rush, and it was really nice not having to worry about those power challenges. You could just carry it through to the dominance phase, and if you had 2 on the board, just free power basically with winter and summer plots, and easy in a deck like that to put in those winter festivals. It goes really quickly.
And it's also good to note that it's like outside of helping a lot of the negative effects of these old Baratheon cards, it is doing the very obvious thing of preventing things like shadows entering play during your power challenges. Easiest example, like Sir Robert Strong can't enter play during that power challenge, so you feel very safe with Summerhall.
Yes, exactly. Basically, once you initiate the challenge, you know whether you are winning it or losing it, or what is about to happen. You have a pretty good idea, because there won't be any surprises. You can increase strength with stuff that is already on the board, obviously, or with the events, but there won't be any the Hound coming in or stuff like that. Or obviously against shadows, it's great. You just have one challenge with absolute safety. If the opponent wants to do anything, they just need to do it in advance. They need to have stuff on the board before you initiate that challenge. And I've seen people forget that. Basically, they had the plan to pose something, to do something, bring something onto the board. But once you are in that challenge, it's basically over. Summerhall is standing, so nothing you can do unless you can kneel or blank Summerhall in the action window after the challenge is initiated.
Yeah, and it's obviously a very easy target for assault too, so it has a little bit of counterplay there, which is nice.
Yeah, and low cost as well, so even the little guys can get it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, blocks your own stuff though as well. You cannot do pinch of powder in the power challenge. You cannot play. Well, you can play trading with Kohor, but that's one challenge where if Summerhall is on the board, you cannot switch the attachments. And the Battle of the Trident doesn't work either. During power challenges, the plot cannot enter play, so it cannot be revealed.
Does that count as enter play?
Yes, this was ruled before with Reigns, with Tyrell character that whenever something enters play during the challenges phase, you can draw cards and then discard them. It was a bestow character from one of the earlier cycles. It was ruled that it works with Reigns, so plots do enter and leave play when they are revealed.
Very nice. I like Summerhall even more now.
Yeah. And what else do we have here? So burn doesn't kill characters during that challenge, but you're not safe from that because those, I think all of them last until the end of the phase, so characters will just die immediately after the challenge is over. And removal effects that would expire. Okay, so that cannot currently happen. I can't think of a scenario where a removal effect would expire during a power challenge and then stop you bringing a character in. And okay, events can be played, that's obvious, they do not enter play, so you can still play those, but if you want to play something like Support of the People, you won't be able to put the location into play because it cannot enter play. Not sure if you can still play the event. It says shuffle your deck, so maybe that counts as changing the game state. Not sure, or if that's just a reminder that that's what you do when you search the entire deck. Not sure about that. And the other one I have listed here, so Alchemist Guildhall is a cancel that leaves play, or something like Bran Stark, for instance. If you want to cancel events, those cannot trigger because the cost has them leave play, so they cannot do their effect. So that's something that's really nice as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so with Summerhall on the board, those Kingswoods suddenly not such a joke. So if you are, for instance, putting 2 or 3 of those into play along with that King Stannis' host, or even the first 7-cost Stannis that we got back in the day, they stack, and if you have -3 on everything the opponent controls, basically it's that's pretty safe. You're not losing a power challenge from that, I don't think.
Yeah.
And then the other one was Long May He Reign. So this one I tried and it doesn't really work that well because it looks like a better bodyguard. Okay, it cannot sacrifice itself during power challenges, so it always prevents the character from being killed. But then what do you do with that? If you want to play resets yourself to get an advantage, for instance, Wildfire Assault has the character survive, or Morghulis. It's not really something you would like to do if you put your high cost kings in. It's and then you're relying on the opponent to have resets and effects that target your king characters, and it's not really something you can control that well. So I couldn't get that to work, but maybe someone else can get it. Yeah, so that's Baratheon. It's actually, I think, I was a little bit disappointed, I have to admit, with some of the earlier releases for Baratheon. Specifically, Hear My Words was a good one because it had Dark and Full of Terrors and Set Down Our Deeds, which are 2 great events that do lots of different stuff. And I think this one is also one of the best releases for Baratheon in recent times, with this, particularly with Summerhall, which is a really Not sure if it's that strong, but it's a really interesting card for sure. That
it's a welcome card to that deck type, I think.
Yeah, and it brings lots of cards back from the old days. So there was some talk of rotation recently, which not sure what exactly that means. The way FFG planned it was to have the earlier cycles removed one at a time or two at a time, which would then remove most of the cards we've just talked about here, the Stannis, Kingswood, the White Ravens. So that would be really bad timing, but we'll see how that is done and if it is done at all. Personally, my opinion is that it's not really needed at the moment. It would just be losing cards for no obvious benefit.
Yeah.
Okay, and then let's have a look at Greyjoy.
Yeah.
So we have the Iron Fleet. That's the Greyjoy army. Has the Raider trait, pillage obviously, and a constant ability, reduce the cost of each Raider character you marshal by 1, and then a reaction after you initiate a challenge in which you control an attacking Raider character, discard the top card of each opponent's deck. So what do you think about this one?
I think it's a very interesting addition. It's really going. I hope that it's really going to make that Raider theme a little bit more enticing over just the regular flavor of Greyjoy decks. With like 7 cost Euron and just every other bomb under the sun. The thing I do like about this is that it does trigger Corpse Lake. So, being able to trigger Iron Fleet 3 times by attacking with 3 Raider characters in each challenge, with a Raider character in each challenge type, you have a lot more opportunities to trigger things like Corpse Lake, or just trying to mill your opponent. The passive, as the way the card is designed, it's very clearly meant for that Raider deck, and there's a lot of small Raiders you can just essentially vomit onto the board now, with each one being reduced by 1. Raiders from Pike, Stony Shore Raiders, or 1 now, Cragorn. I think I'm saying that right. Eager Deckhand you usually cheat into play. I feel like it's getting a lot of value in that very specific deck. Outside of that, though, I don't think you'll see any play.
Yeah, so I was a little worried about this actually, the reduction, just working on everything. It looks a little bit crazy, but okay, how many can you really put in a single round?
Yeah.
Botley Crew. There's some that are played in various decks, Orkmond River, for instance, as well. So yeah, that's can be quite dangerous, but probably won't be that important in the end. So lots of the new cards released from the Forgotten Heroes onwards mentioned these Raider synergies that really so far haven't really led anywhere. I think when I did the statistical overview of the Battle of the Nations, which new cards, so that was played immediately after Hear My Words was released, and I had a look which new cards were included in decks, and almost nothing from Greyjoy, only the Drowned God decks had the new event at the time, and none of the other cards were chosen. Basically it's been stuck in that same old play the four big guys, Balon, Asha, Euron, Victarion, occasionally Dagmer, basically, and either that or maybe sometimes Drowned God, maybe 1 in 5, for instance. It's a Drowned God deck, but they're not touching the new stuff because those synergies are so established and they work so well. And all this Raider support, it's interesting. It does things, but hasn't had much impact. But now with the character that reduces the cost of every single one, certainly worth trying, I think. And then the reaction. Go ahead.
I was going to say, for people wanting to make people to help people want to play these raider decks over those decks that have been staples for so long, it has to do a lot of useful things for that deck. And I can see that reducing all raiders by 1 can be a bit problematic, but it's sort of you're investing 8 gold. It sort of needs to be worth it, I feel. So hopefully that doesn't get too out of hand. It'd be good to keep a close eye on that.
Yeah, it's usually it's a bit risky to play a high cost army. Obviously, resets. Cannot carry it through Dohaeris very well, and Morghulis kills it. But Greyjoy maybe a bit less worried about resets than other factions because of the saves.
Yep.
So, and then I was just going to say the reaction. So this is usually most of the Greyjoy pillage mechanics are tied into that pillage keyword. They happen in a challenge resolution if you win with characters, but this one, it's just a reaction to initiating a challenge, so it's not really, doesn't have that much counterplay, and 3 per round, that's a pretty big number, especially against decks that draw well themselves. You can get at those cards pretty quickly. I think maybe mill is an option with this. But then mill decks possibly they do like to reset to stop opponent getting from 15 power, and having an 8 coster not that great for that.
Yeah.
Can't really judge that myself. I'm not really, that good with mill.
Yeah, it's a bit of a balance. Trying to mill your opponent and stopping them from winning. I think this will definitely help with mill, obviously. And you're right, there isn't too much counterplay to it, but at least it won't be triggering a lot of those pillage reactions, as you mentioned, because it's not pillage; it's a separate thing.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, the only one it does trigger is corpse lake.
Yeah, I think so. I've looked at that a little bit, but I couldn't find anything else. But it is limit 3 times per round, corpse lake. So with 3 challenges, okay, the Iron Fleet possibly can participate in one of them unless you stand it. But if you're playing a raider deck, you're probably having all 3 challenges, and then corpse lake might hit 1 or 2, and then you have it has pillage as well, and you'll have pillage characters. So I can't imagine that you wouldn't get all 3 triggers for corpse lake with this. That can get pretty fast. So it was initially, earlier in the design process, it was more of a rush card. I think it had
power gain, yeah.
It had power gain depending on the number of cards in the opponent's discard pile. I think it was for every 10 cards was the wording. So if the opponent had 30 cards in the discard pile, you could gain 3 power after something happened. I'm not sure what exactly. Maybe after it pillaged the card or after it won a challenge. Something like that. It was a little bit swingy. Sometimes it gained lots of power.
Yeah, and when you already had corpse lake and the will men do despise us from In My Words, they're available for power gain. I do feel like adding another one on top of that might have been a bit problematic, because when you combine the 3 of them together, you could potentially rush and win the game in a single turn. If things go, if the cards line up.
Yeah, but not in the early game.
Yeah.
You still need to put the cards in the discard.
No. Yeah, of course.
And then those archivists obviously really mess up with Greyjoy's plans.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have a warship, Foam Drinker.
Yes. I love the art on this card.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
While you control Dagmar Clevejaw, he gains Assault. And then it has an action Nil Foam Drinker to choose a captain or raider character until the end of the phase. That character gains a challenge icon of your choice. So when we look at this list of raiders here, mostly Euron is a Tricon, and Craigoran has the Intrigue icon. but most of them either have only the military trait, or some of them have military and power. So I imagine this is mostly needed for that intrigue icon here in those decks.
Yeah, I feel like it's very welcome for those specific decks. As a Martell player, I'm scared of it, but it's a very fair card because those decks do need more than just military to actually work. And like Iron Fleet's a great example. It needs those icons to be able to trigger to initiate those challenges.
Yeah, captains are more. I think the captains have more icons here. Let me just check. So Asha is a captain, Euron is a captain.
Yeah.
Victarion. Lucas Cod has the intrigue icon.
Yeah.
And then we have Dagmer. So Dagmer doesn't have it. The thing I find interesting here, so when claim is applied in a challenge where Dagmer is attacking alone, you can take a non-limited location with printed cost 3 or lower. So this character, in comparison with the other 6 and 7 costers Greyjoy has, that's the one that is probably the least played. Sometimes you see a single copy, especially when the loop was popular before the latest restricted list. You could get a copy of Dagman in decks as well, sometimes 3, and use his ability. But if you have Foam Drinker, so he gains assault, which means if he assaults limited location, and that location is blank, and then when you trigger his interrupt, when claim is applied, you can take that location. So for instance, 7 cost with assault can target the arbor, gets rid of that limited keyword, and then you can take it, which is something Dagmar couldn't do before.
Yeah, I think it's very, very interesting. I like the idea of him gaining that ability, I guess. And obviously Foam Drink is able to make him a Tricon too, if he wants.
Yeah, and just assault in general, not just the limited stuff. You can blank something that would stop him triggering that interrupt.
Yep.
That's actually while I mentioned that, so taking that limited keyword is I think it has I haven't checked that, but possibly you could find other stuff that does during the challenges phase. So previously we had nightmares to take the limited keyword, and now assault works with that as well. If there is something that can get it, something like lay waste in the challenges phase. I haven't really researched that, but it could be interesting to see. And I know there are plans for further reactions to locations being targeted by assault, by having them discarded from play and stuff like that. There were some ideas that I've read in recent days, so it would be interesting.
I can think of possibly like a Stark VS deck where you blank a limited location, then you Frozen Solid.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Stark has that trick. I think there was a deck that put Frozen Solid on its own location on the Northern Armory to cancel its text. Yeah, it stood in the standing phase, and then you could play Cohort to get rid of Frozen Solid for something else, and you could repeat the stand. But yeah, not that great actually. Better just to use Rickard Karstark for that. I think you can get the back from the discard pile to be used again. Yeah, so Foam Drinker, lovely card, beautiful art, very blue.
Yeah.
And then so Valyrian Steel Armor is that the only? It's one of 3 attachments in this pack. And so if attached character is Euron, he gains insight, and then you have this text while you control no non-army characters with printed cost 6 or higher other than attached character. Attached character cannot be killed or discarded from play. So are you playing this on anyone other than Euron? What do you think?
Probably not. I feel like this fits perfectly again into that Raider style deck with Raider Euron, the redesigned one, because you don't necessarily want to have any other bombs in that deck. Maybe an Asher, but you could easily go different Asher. And then he's almost invulnerable. I think the only thing that could remove him from play is return to hand tech. I don't I don't really see this being fitted into any other Greyjoy decks, or more specifically onto any other bombs. But that's always available. Having a card that stops someone from dying or being discarded is pretty useful.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
You're probably not putting them in the same deck, so you're not playing, for instance, if you're playing Urion, you're not playing Balon as well in that deck, then, because he's just either he's stuck in your hand or he blocks the attachment from working. So you just need to commit at the start to your 6 or 7 coster, and they are pretty equal in power. I think the 4 big ones that Greyjoy has, you could pick any one of those. So if Euron is gaining something from the attachments and the others are not, you may as well just go for Euron.
Yeah.
There's one with Renown, one with Intimidate, so both of them can be stood in the challenges phase and work alright.
Yeah, and when you use like is it Maiden's Bane? It stands.
Yes, if you
Yeah.
win an unopposed challenge.
Yeah. So being able to get 3 insights on a Tricon is also very enticing. Very, very, very nice to see.
And there is a way to give Renown to the one that doesn't have it as well, if you work for that. And I think you can give Intimidate as well with that Dragon Binder, is it? That's rarely played.
Yeah.
And then, okay, you're stuck with, you can do Asha or you can do Victarion or Balon. Asha is available, the 5 coster is available, which actually, to be fair, was a pretty good card in the core set. It was played for a long time before the ridiculous overpowered version was released.
Yeah. I think the early version of this armor, I don't know if you remember, it was simply attached character cannot be killed or discarded from play. I think the problem with that is just it just fits perfectly into the deck that's already being played everywhere. So, it's not really going to do anything to the meta. In fact, it's just going to make that deck even more hard to deal with. This one at least is telling the deck builder, hey, build a different type of deck. Don't just put all the bombs in this deck. Make something that works with probably Euron, but a key character, and then build your deck around that. And you're rewarded for doing that.
Yeah, I think there was another version before this latest one that said no Ironborn characters, I think. And then there were some high costers still available that did stuff without the Ironborn trait. So this is even more restricted. But you can find other characters in Greyjoy that simply don't see play because the deck is basically set. You have the characters that work the best, so the others are pushed aside. In any other faction they would be played a lot, but in Greyjoy not so much. So if you're doing this armor, it should bring back some characters that we've maybe forgotten about. And so the one I played against in testing was Banner of the Dragon because of the Queen's Guard, which works great in any character that has insight and gets the card straight back. And then, of course, if it's Euron, he is a Tricon, so he gets every challenge.
Yep.
I think that's probably the one that will see played the most. Unless maybe you could do Mono Greyjoy or you could do Banner Dragon. I think those are the best options.
Yeah. And there's obviously Silence as well to stand in.
Yeah, Silence stands him, and Maiden's Bane are the two stands that work. And Silence is just passive stand, it doesn't need Euron to participate in challenges, so it will always work.
Yeah.
And one of the versions can just find it as well when it enters play. Okay, so here's hoping that we see some of the new cards played in Greyjoy. We haven't yet, basically, in this era post FFG, but maybe this time, who knows.
I know I'll be putting together a few Raider decks and trying them out at some point.
Yeah. I was going to play one in the last playtesting tournament, but then someone else played Greyjoy and I went a different way in the end. Just basically putting all the Raiders in to see if they would be ridiculous with the Iron Fleet. But haven't played it in the end, so not sure.
Yeah.
But looking forward to playing against it for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, should we have a look at Lannister?
Yes.
So these are quite interesting. One of the better factions, I think, in my opinion, in this pack, as far as interesting cards are concerned. So Lord Tywin's host, slightly weaker than the others, only has 7 strength for whatever reason. And this one has pillage as well. While you control Tywin Lannister, he gains military icon. So the Tywin that is usually played is a Tricon, obviously the 7-coster, but then there is the 5-cost version as well, which does not have a military icon, and this is the version that probably works the best with this army, which says after a Lannister character you control discards a card using pillage. The losing opponent must choose and discard a card with the same card type from their hand, unless they reveal a hand containing no cards with that card type. Limit 3 times per round. Yeah. So, what do you do with this one? There is a pillage deck that I've enjoyed playing. I played it with the green side agenda that once Tywin is on the board, it basically has targeted pillage for any Lannister character that says after a specific card type is discarded using pillage. For instance, Sir Gregor's Marauders does that, and the Tickler does this in the Dominance phase, and some others as well. So those decks quite fun to play, especially with Mountain's Man, which also gives like a quasi-intimidate effect. If you're going first, you can kneel most of the board, and then you have the 2 game plans basically getting to 15 power, and mill as well is a possibility if most of your board has pillage. And this one quite crazy actually, because it doesn't need to participate itself, so limit 3 times per round. You could hit various card types and just discard a few cards from hand.
Yeah. It just feels like a very useful pillage card. Because like best case scenario, well, it's not really best case scenario, but in both scenarios you're either discarding more cards from their hand or you're getting information about their hand. Both very, very useful to you. And you can do it 3 times per round. So if you discard a card type and you get to see their hand, you can then use Tywin to next time you pillage, the pillage Tywin can choose the right card to discard the right card from their hand. It's very versatile, I feel.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you have glass candles as well, which can manipulate the top card a little bit if you want to do that.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty good one. Don't really have that much to say about it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the Lannister players will be slightly disappointed because lately it's either the crossing decks with characters that can gain power with renown with some jumpers, or it's shadows, and this is supporting the pillage team, which isn't really that popular. But I think that's definitely a fun deck to play, so looking forward to that.
Yeah, definitely. And this will definitely add a lot of value to that deck. And I think it is worth the 8 cost. I think that did 7 as well just because the reaction itself was very, very useful in that deck. But yeah, I think it will be helpful.
And if anyone can cheat it into play, obviously Lannister can, because they have stuff like Harrenhal, and also Burning Bright was one of the cards that recently did a lot of damage with those House Lord and Knights. That's available. Obviously, it puts armies into play, and this is an 8 coster, so you're saving 6 gold with that.
Yeah.
For a single use, possibly, because you do have to discard it at the end of the phase, but okay, still a good tempo play.
Yep.
Okay, and then we have a couple more interesting cards here. So these guys are, I'm going to guess it's pronounced Sir Jacelyn Bywater. That would be my guess.
Yeah.
This is
I think it's that or Sir Jacelyn, something like that. Yeah.
Jacelyn.
Jacelyn Bywater. Yeah.
I guess in some cases nobody really knows, since this is comes from a book. So unless the characters appeared in the show, for instance, we don't really know how they. I know some people still pronounce Baratheon as Baratheon. I've heard that on some podcasts, so that's interesting to me, even after the show, to have that pronunciation. And people just can't seem to agree how Doran is supposed to be pronounced. Is it Doran or is it Doran?
Doran, yeah.
So this guy,
anything works.
Ambush 5 himself, and then he has passive text. You may ambush non-unique Lannister characters from your discard pile as if they were in your hand. Okay, so this is useful, or is it? Let's have a look at characters with ambush in Lannister.
It's definitely one of the characters I feel that will, similar to Summerhall, boost a card, as you'll probably see, that rarely gets any play, being Gold Cloaks.
Gold Cloaks, yes, from the core set. So this is Ambush 2 that discards itself at the end of the phase when you cheat it into play. That's one of the options you have. And a couple of old ones here as well. You have Red Keep Spy that never saw play. It can return the character to its owner's hand if it enters play using ambush. And the Queen's Assassin, this one you do see occasionally. Ambush 4, and if you have more cards in hand, opponent must kill a character. Those are the spies, and then you have the clansmen, milk snakes, painted dogs, burn men, what else? Stone crows. So in a clansman deck, this guy might be played, even though he does not have the trait himself.
I think in that deck he'd be a useful one-off at the very least.
Yeah, because there are so many targets basically for his ability, and getting stuff in the discard pile is something Lannister can do. So either it just ends in the discard pile after it's discarded, if you're using stuff like Lion Star or Hear Mirror or stuff like that to cheat characters into play, and then they have that gold mine as well, which you can just use intentionally to put something in the discard pile that you can then just ambush as if it were in your hand, and then you get another card out of that as well. That was the synergy that was useful with Sir Adam Marbrand as well, and it's again available here.
I think it's a very nice card to see. As I mentioned, I'm a big fan of cards that make older cards that weren't playable a lot more playable. I feel like this pack has a lot of that, whether it's intentional or not. So yeah,
I think Summerhall definitely was intentional. The other
a
coincidence, but certainly a pleasant one.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last one.
Yep.
An interesting one. Lovely art on this one, Fair Isle. So this one says kneel Feral to choose an opponent. That player chooses 2 cards in their hand if able and places them on top of their deck in any order. At the end of the phase, that player draws 2 cards. Also has +1 income. So at first glance it looks like it doesn't do much. It takes 2 cards away and then the opponent gets them back. But when you look more closely at the possible synergies, this is actually quite an interesting one. And the first one that springs to mind is High Sparrow, which stops the draw. So you only get to... Basically, the opponent has to get rid of 2 of their cards and then gets nothing back, or, well, maybe 1 card if they've drawn nothing apart from the draw phase in that round. That's one thing you could do. And then possibly, well, just getting rid of the opponent's hand for any potential tricks. If you're playing against Burn with limited cards in hand, you know that maybe that Consuming Flames isn't a realistic threat after you trigger Feral, or that Dracarys or whatever, or any ambush that the opponent might have in hand. You get rid of that during the challenges phase, and then it comes back in dominance, where there's nothing to be done with those cards.
Yeah, and then the way that you, like, if you look even further into it with a lot of other Lannister synergies, all those cards that work when you have more cards in your hand than other opponents, or they have no cards in hand, this just makes that a whole lot more viable. You've got Martell Baratheon to help you with keeping your cards in hand higher than your opponent's. And then you've got, I would say, 4 cards that you never see play, just because it's very difficult. Cersei's Attendant, Insidious Scheme, Golden Tooth, and Tommen Baratheon. They all work or get a larger benefit when your opponent has no cards in hand. If you manage to get them to 2 cards in the challenges phase, you can then kneel Fair Isle to get them to that no cards point in a very fair way, I feel.
Yeah, that's certainly useful.
Yeah.
No cards, and let's see, just search for more cards as well. So those are the assassins, the spies that we saw before, are 2 of the cards that work with that. Then Tommen stops power for unopposed. Insidious Scheme gets more draw. So that event, I've tried it. I've played a lot back in the day. That was a lot of those Lannister decks that focus on intrigue challenges and then try to reset with the Varys and stuff like that. That was early in the game, let's say 2016, something like that. Never really did that much. And Insidious Scheme as draw. If you're getting 2 cards from that, it just so 1 card gain after it replaces itself, and then of course 4 cards is that's a great draw. Suddenly it's a big difference. Cersei's Attendant, okay, I'm guessing this one won't be played, so it has Insight if it wins the challenge. Still, even if it had printed Insight 2 for 3 Monocon, maybe, I don't know.
It is still quite efficient for its cost. Like in that sort of, in the deck, for what the deck is trying to do, which is obviously discard your cards in your opponent's hand, it at least meets that criteria with 2 for 3 Intrigue Icon. But yeah, I think out of all the ones that this helps, probably still won't really see much play.
Golden Tooth can get 3 gold, so that you can do that in the challenges phase, because Fair Isle is only a challenges action, so you need to play a deck with ambush or shadows, but obviously Lannister can do that as well. I think also having the option of using Golden Tooth in taxation, I think is great as well, even if it's just for the 1 gold. You never know. You could play that treachery on Maester Kerwin or something like that, or a bodyguard. So yeah, 3 cost, it's a big investment. Okay, give something back with the income, but it's an interesting ability. You might use it even just if the opponent has no cards or one card. Well, not if the opponent has no cards, that would be silly, but if they have one card, it's still usable. The wording allows you to use it, then you're giving them an extra card in the dominance phase, but you get to do all of your stuff in the challenges while they're down to 0 cards.
Yeah, I think this will be a very good card for a Red Door deck.
Yeah,
House of the Red Door.
it gives income and it's not limited. That's a good point, because I remember back in the day the God's Eye was suggested as an option just to play as a red door location because of its income. If people were wondering if it's better than just playing a generic agenda like Fealty, and it turns out that nobody really played that. But this one, you get the income and you get an ability.
Yeah.
So it could be a good one, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Martell. I wonder
Martell.
if you have any opinions about the Martell cards.
Oh, not at all. We can skip them completely.
Okay, so the Lord Anders's host, that's the one that keeps getting changed or kept getting changed throughout the process.
Yeah.
It's quite complicated. I'll just read it. So this one has ambush as the keyword. Ambush 8, that's its printed cost, and it has the +1 initiative as well. And the text is: after a card enters play from your hand or shadows area during a challenge, choose a participating character with the lower printed cost than that card's and return it to its owner's hand, limit once per round. So, what are you doing with that?
So, it very obviously has synergy with itself. If you manage to have that 8 gold available, being able to bounce a 7 cost character or lower to hand is very strong. Especially considering you don't really need to work with any icons like for Southern Messenger. Outside of that, even just having it on the field, House Ironwood has a bit of a theme of wanting to go second and reserve and initiative boost, being Cletus and everyone else. This, even if this is sticking onto the field, it's still doing something for you. I think that this will fit very well into really any sort of jumpers deck. It obviously synergizes with core Ariane, same thing with a Bara, Boxer Bara that is, or even an Assault from Shadows deck. It could work really well there. I think this card has a lot of uses in a very specific type of deck.
Yeah, the thing I like about it is basically the versatility. It reminds me of the Dark and Full of Terrors from the Hear My Words pack. Let me just show you that for a second. So this has works on a kneeling character, and then you can choose your own or an opponent's character. And I think that's the interesting part about this as well. Obviously, you will get some players with a very focused and clear intention in deck building. For instance, you have that Rian or Obara that triggers every round. So characters 4 cost or lower, one of them getting bounced. Or you have just play shadows or lots of ambush and have lots of options, and whatever happens, happens. And then you have some guy showing up with just doing some weird thing, returning your own characters to your hand to replay the Aria or Hotach or stuff like that with interplay effects.
Yeah.
Or just a mix of everything, because there's no restrictions. You can choose anything.
Yeah, and it also works with a card entering play too. So, for example, let's say you are ambushing a Venomous Blade during the challenges phase, which is a very Martell thing to do. From that, you could bounce a 2-cost or lower character back to their hand, which is pretty impactful for something like Military Claim, getting rid of those chuds, and now they have to claim someone important. you're right. It is very versatile. It does have a little bit of a. You can see the wording is quite specific, saying entering play from your hand or shadows area. There's one card to blame for that, and his name is his name was modded quite a lot during this pack. Shadows Aegon Targaryen. You know, fetching these 8-cost armies from your deck is pretty strong, but it's even stronger when it's if something like Lord Anders Host is coming into play and returning a 7-cost character to their hand, and then returning back to your hand.
Yeah, for another trigger.
Yeah. So instead of just reacting on something entering play, it's a very specific to work with. So you're working with Martell themes, which is and cheating stuff into play through your hand, like with Ariane or some Shadow Tech. Yeah.
Yeah, they can do that. They can put stuff into play from their deck as well with cards like Mission in Essos, and they're good with
Of course, yeah.
bottom as well, but those don't work with this one.
Yeah.
Aegon, well, still kind of works if you think about it. So you can put the host into play and then react to Aegon entering play from shadows. That still works, but you can only bounce a 3-coster that way.
Yeah. It's just still impactful, because then you do get Lord Anders Host back to your hand. So I don't feel like that deck, which Martell Banner Dragon is quite a decent deck at this point. I don't feel like that. I feel like that still gets a lot of value out of Lord Anders Host. It's just not completely bonkers, which is good. I don't think I'd feel happy with returning 7-cost character to your hand for 3 gold. Yeah.
Yeah, Aegon really kind of puts some limit on what cards can be designed because of his ability.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of like House Florent Knight. Those are two problematic cards that always you always need to consider them. Lead to something broken.
Yep. The only other thing I'd mention with Lord Anders Host is, and I did test this as well, works quite well in a possible Guard House Ironwood deck with the event from Hear My Words. We Guard the Way, I believe it is.
Yes.
Yep. Having a House Ironwood, a big House Ironwood body that doesn't kneel as a defender and would gain renown. Pretty impactful. So there's also that it can do. There's just not as much jumping in that deck.
Yeah, I've played against deck with that event, and House Iron characters was pretty strong. Good on board state. If you don't have Morghulis, difficult to overcome them.
Yeah.
So
you need resets.
Interesting. If you're keeping gold, you need 8 to put this into play, and then if it's already in play, basically, if you have 4, 5, 6 gold left in the challenger's phase, it's quite a deterrent to put anything useful into challenge. It kind of feels like playing against burn decks, where just having something participate makes it unsafe.
Yeah.
But then it is return to hand. It's not such a penalty really. The 7-cost Ariane, for instance, has been around for a while, and it's not really that scary if you think about it. She can return basically any character with just a little bit of a strength boost, basically any character to hand. Although she does trade herself as well, you need to replay her. While the host can, for instance, just do that Dornish Spy every round or something like that and bounce something.
Yeah, I do feel like this Lord Anders Host will, you might see Endoran's name played a little bit more, and it also works quite well with Iron Bank. Whether it's you're returning Lord Anders Host to your hand to gain 8 gold to work within the challenges phase, or you're just doing Endoran's name to gain gold to put it into play during the challenges phase. I feel like those might be played a little bit more in that deck.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is, we're judging which 8-cost army is the best. I think this one might be the most interesting. I think if something broken comes up, I think this is the most likely one.
Yeah, it's very possible to break things. But fingers crossed.
Okay, and then we have another one for Martell, Windblown. This is an army mercenary. Also has Assault and Shadow 3. And the reaction after you win a challenge in which Windblown is participating, you turn it to Shadows to choose and stand an army or mercenary character. So this is kind of like Painted Dogs in the sense that it can just trigger on itself if you want stuff coming in and out of Shadows. But I think while you do see that occasionally with Painted Dogs just choosing themselves to re-enter play, I think this one probably will be standing armies, more likely. I've did a little search yesterday for mercenaries, and turns out that there aren't that many of them. Excuse me, mercenary. In Martell there is just the Tattered Prince, obviously, which is supposed to work with Windblown, but then he has Bestow too, so if you're doing challenges with him and trying to get renown, how do you get gold on him? For instance, you could do free companies. That's, I think, the only obvious way where you could get gold on him. But the trade that really, I think, interests Martell is the army, because they have, as it turns out recently, they have some of the strongest armies. They have Host of the Boneway, which is a huge army with Intimidate. It just gets strength by itself, doesn't even need the Prince's Plan. Knights of the Sun have Renown, and then you have the Host, obviously, the new one, and the Starfall Cavalry, which you are playing as well to get the 3-card draw. So some huge armies there, especially the Intimidate one. I think if you can stand that, that's a pretty good play.
Yeah, it definitely does boost those. It's also good to note it can also work well with Knights of the Sun. Their Knights armies. Reusing Renown is always great. Its original intent was something that can help Tattered Prince be a little bit more effective when it is on the board. So I think it does do that. Might be good for like a nearly a game-winning turn, or as you said, in a Free Companies deck. But hitting armies, I think this card definitely finds its stride in heavy army decks. Not really as much in shadow decks, because really the only thing that works there is Tattered Prince. But yeah, it is also it's a Shadows 3, so it's not cheaper to bring it out. But it is a if the cards line up, if you have the right board, it definitely does impact things quite a bit.
Yeah, you could save the 2 gold to put it in Shadows in the first place if you repeat this. So 3 every round. Kind of like the Tattered Prince, actually. The 6 cost Ariane that takes icons is the one that I like with the Tattered Prince, because it's a repeatable trigger, because you can get it back into Shadows. And then Windblown is kind of the same. It's repeatable and non-unique as well. So if you're winning the challenge, maybe give the Tattered Prince another stand, and then goes back to come back next round or later in the phase to take another icon. So definitely works with the Tattered Prince as intended, I think, in various scenarios. Yeah,
but I think the good thing is it doesn't seem to just work in every deck. It's a very specific type of deck that it's fit for. Similar to, like, as we mentioned, like Jacelyn Bywater and the Raider fleet. It's a very specific type.
Yeah. And just a quick point about the timing. So if you are assaulting a location, the reaction to put it back into Shadows will be happening after the assault nears the location when the winner of the challenge is determined. So that happens automatically, like the crossing trigger happens. It's basically a delayed effect that happens immediately after you win the challenge, and then you can trigger the reaction. So you don't need to worry about Windblown going away before assault fully resolves. Okay, and then the last one Sandstone
Yeah.
is a stronghold, and it has a reaction. After you win a challenge as the attacking player, kneel Sandstone to have an attacking character gain 1 power for each defending character with fewer than 2 challenge icons to a maximum of 3 power. So another one of these locations, kind of like Hellholt and the Boneway, that can gain power in interesting ways in the challenger's phase. So what do you think about this one?
I think this one is... It's going to be quite interesting because it has the potential to gain a lot of power, but it also does require a little bit of work to do so. When I was testing with this, the main thing I was testing was Icon Viper. I feel like he is the perfect target for this location. And if you bundle in a bunch of... you need to bundle in some icon removal and some challenge pool. If you manage to get all those cards to line up, it really does reward you for that. Otherwise, it's just sort of sitting there looking pretty. So yeah, I think it's one of those locations where it's like if you do manage to get the cards to line up, it's very useful. Otherwise, it's just there waiting to do its thing.
Yeah, so kind of like the Boneway. The Boneway, when it's on the board, either forces the opponent basically just stop feeding it without good reason, and maybe they don't initiate that many challenges, or they do and you get the power, and you can do some tricks to basically force the opponent to win. We've seen that deck played before. I think there's even a recording somewhere of that deck being played. I think using the Princess plan to boost strength of opponent's characters to feed the Boneway and Hellholt was an interesting concept. And then this one kind of does the same thing. So you attack, it's obvious that you're going to win. So what does the opponent do with their characters that don't have the icons? And then of course there are surprises as well. In Martell you can take icons after the challenge is resolved, or after the characters are declared, to bring characters down to 1 or 0 icons as well.
Yeah, so that's right. I think it does need to combine 2 or 3 things. Like you need a character that you're willing to protect because the power gets put onto them. You need icon removal, obviously, and you need... Realistically, I think you need challenge pool, either that or a lot of surprises during the challenges phase, to be able to effectively get as much power from it as possible. And this actually, one thing I wanted to note is this actually introduces a House Coolguile keyword. This is their home. And I guess you might be seeing some more future House Coolguile stuff that sort of fits that theme of manipulating challenge icons during a challenge rather than manipulating challenge icons to prevent challenges. I think this encapsulates that quite well.
Yeah, looking forward to that. I've played a lot of icon removal, the one that stops characters participating in the first place, but this is looks an interesting mechanic as well. Yeah, so just a list of the characters that can force defenders to participate here. So Ilaria can do up to 3, and Sword of the Morning can do up to 3. That's the one that we've seen played a lot recently. It's a card from Hear My Words that is actually quite efficient. Pulls 3 characters into a challenge and gives you strength, gives you the chance to beat them as well, not just basically pull them into a challenge that you plan to lose. And then the Fowler Twins, also very playable. Okay, Dornish Paramore from the core set. I haven't seen that in the game, but maybe maybe with this, who knows. And Dornish Revenge. Okay, this one I haven't seen either, but that also forces a character to participate.
Yeah, it could work, but the other 3 methods are just much more efficient, being Ilaria, Sword of the Morning, and Fowler Twins.
Okay, and just a clarification, of course, there are 3 challenge icons: military, intrigue, and power, and you can only, basically for the purpose of this, you can have one instance of an icon. It only checks whether you have a particular icon or not, even if you're gaining multiple instances from different sources.
Yeah.
So if you have a character that has a printed, I don't know, military icon, and then gains like the Tywin that we saw earlier. So if you play the 5-cost Tywin with the 8-cost army and gains a military icon, it has one icon, and then if you're playing the Corset Tywin, he has 2 instances of that icon, but for the purposes of Sandstone, it will also only have one icon.
Yeah, I think an example I actually ran into, I think, was versing Sir Jeremy Riker in Night's Watch, where he gives every Raider character, not every Ranger character, a power icon. And if you removed the character that already, I think it was a ranging party, I believe, you removed their military icon. Technically, they have 2 power icons, but it only counts as 1 for checking Sandstone.
Yes, exactly. That's that's what I was trying to say, but yeah, that's a much better example. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and of course, the defending character is a character that is participating on the opponent's side. Here, it's not just any character on the board. That would be pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think out of the 3 Martell cards, this is definitely the one I'll be playing the most at the moment, just to see how well it works out.
Yeah, the other 2 are quite obviously useful, but this one is a little more of a mystery. Let's see if it works. It will be interesting to see.
Yep, my Icon Viper deck will love it.
Okay, so we have 4 to go, 4 factions to go. So let's see what Night's Watch has. So this great ranging army has been described earlier on the Iron Throne chat as possibly the strongest card ever printed. So we'll see if indeed it is. So it has all kinds of keywords: assault, insight, intimidate, and of course no attachments. And it has both the ranger and the steward trait and the corresponding icons. And then the reaction is pretty simple. It just puts Fist of the First Man into play. So let's have a look at what that does. I bet most people don't even know, because it's a card that basically is not played. So while your reserve value is higher than an opponent's, each ranger character you control gets +1 strength and cannot be bypassed by stealth. So Great Ranging gives a +1 reserve itself, and there are other Night's Watch cards that do the same, that are quite easy actually to put into a deck. So you might be, most of the time, have higher reserve value, and then okay, cannot be bypassed by stealth is reasonably useful, but the +1 strength for ranger characters, if you're playing a dedicated ranger deck, is always useful. So you're not doing anything great with the ability. It's an obvious trigger that just happens when you marshal this, but it's all the keywords here really that are the dangerous thing. So if you're going first, you have intimidate with an army that okay, not that easy to stand or to make it not kneel in a military challenge, but it gets 1 big intimidate through for sure, and then has insight as well, and assault, which can target any location, and there is, with no attachments, very limited ways to take those keywords away as well. So recently, Night's Watch, we've seen the wall defense still being played basically for years now without any interruption. It's always been pretty successful and reliable, and some choke also being played in Night's Watch with the stewards and stuff like that, and as a banner as well, or just Night's Watch Crack and Night's Watch Wolf we've seen. So those are the decks that we do see, and the Rangers going first non-kneeling characters, some characters with stealth, not that much recently at all. So maybe this one will bring those decks back. What do you think?
Maybe. Yeah, I think it might help Rangers. I actually, we can't ignore the Steward trait here as well, and obviously the +1 reserve. We were just mentioning that it's a bit difficult to stand. It does actually work with Saturn, the character that stands the Steward character. So it does gain a bit of strength there. I do think though that because it's obviously fetching Fist of the First Men, that I really do think you could have a decent mix in that deck. You wouldn't really have builders, I don't think, but you could have rangers and stewards lit around that deck. And if you need the third icon, you just have the character I just mentioned earlier, Jeremy Riker. He's giving all your rangers that power icon that you desperately need. Stewards are getting the intrigue icon, and then you have military. So I think you can definitely get a lot of value out of this in a ranger deck, but I also think you should consider the Steward trait in there too, to get as much value as possible.
Yeah, so Satin is a good call actually. Yeah, I haven't considered that. Basically, when I think of stewards, I think of the Red Cook and stuff like that. Just playing Choke with Clydas and the Ravens, where 8 cost is a bit much to put this into play in a deck like that. And yeah, but just getting the stand out of it, that's a pretty good play. I think there are some cards, I've listed a couple here, that look at all the traits in Night's Watch. They want you to have a ranger, a steward and a builder on the board, but doesn't seem to be anything immediately useful. So fresh recruits, you search your deck for all 3 traits and you can find 2 copies of Great Ranging, which actually is not that bad. It's an immediate duplicate to survive resets. And then you have this Westward by the Bridge. This character counts for 2 traits. It stands a location which basically can only really be the wall. So playing this in a wall defense, I'm not sure about that, but you would have a builder character for sure in that type of deck. And then the third one that looks at all 3 traits is the horn that wakes the sleepers. That's actually an interesting one. After an opponent initiates a challenge against you, choose and stand a builder, a ranger and a steward. So this helps a little bit with those play restrictions, because you need to have all 3 on the board, and if you have one character that takes care of 2 traits, it's a little bit easier to trigger. But those are the cards that basically difficult to see in play. I think I've seen Westward by the Bridge in some decks that defended the wall, but the other two I don't remember ever seeing played. So
yeah, I think this will see a lot of value in, just to make it very broad, non-builder decks, which is nice to hear.
I wonder if there is a reliable builder that goes in basically any deck. Let's have a look. Something that helps any strategy. Well, you can have Halder and the Shadow Tower Mason. Hotel the Arbic. Gains a challenge icon of your choice. Okay, that's not too bad.
Yeah, I think that there's a few here and there. I think you'd like to see a lot of chuds. That builder at the wall, for example, doesn't seem too terrible.
Yeah, that's if nothing else, just helps with setups.
Yeah,
that's the one card, non-steward card, I put in my Steward's Choke deck, just because of the icon and because of the cost. It's very easy to include. yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah.
That's another faction where it's kind of set in its ways. It's difficult to get it to play new cards and try different strategies. But giving it this army with all the keywords, I think might be successful.
Yeah, might be a way to do that.
And then we have Old Bear's Raven. So this is something that probably goes in a different deck altogether. It's one cost character with an intrigue icon and none of the traits. It's a Raven, has ambush 2 and an action, return Old Bear's Raven to your hand to stand Old Bear Mormont max twice per round. So this one, so when's the last time you saw Old Bear Mormont played in a deck?
Probably never. It's so long ago that I cannot remember. I did.
Exist,
yeah,
but one is
Yeah, I
from
just
the bin
forgot.
pack, so basically only 2.
yeah. I did give this one a bit of a test though, and I really did enjoy playing Old Bear Mormont after this Raven, this Raven character. I think that it probably finds the most use with the 6 cost Old Bear Mormont, so the one that puts characters into play from the opponent's discard pile.
Yeah.
Being able to reuse that is just invaluable for such a cheap chud as well. You could also put a what was it, Lord Steward, that attachment from Hear My Words. You put that onto that Old Bear Mormont, it becomes a Tricon that you're standing with Old Bear's Raven. A lot of damage can be done with that combo.
Yeah, it can. It's that's another card that hasn't seen a lot of play. It's difficult to put it in because of the no attachments trait that's present in Night's Watch. So the positive attachments are not that great on most characters.
Yeah.
It's a unique character. Certainly, this is a good one. So this one can be stood, and the other one is a non-kneeler, so not that useful to stand him. And he doesn't have renown. His text basically just says that he defends the wall, which is maybe not something you are looking to do with this. But 2 stands pretty good. If you can, he can enter play with ambush, and then there is another way with the Cage of Ravens to put Old Bear's Raven in for free as well. And I think, okay, to return to hand, he needs Old Bear Mormont on the board. He cannot do it otherwise. But even without that, I think this will see play, because when Hear My Words was released, we had Jingle Bell, which was a character that when he dies, he searches for something that shares a trait with him. So for a House Frey and full characters, and I definitely saw him played in decks that had none of those traits, so his search was going to fizzle no matter what, and people just playing him for the cost to help with setups. And this one is actually, apart from having that cost one that you can set up with something like Jon Snow, for instance, in the deck that Marius played recently in was it the German Nationals, that Voltron's the Tricon Jon Snow. You need cheap ones, which Night's Watch has. It has 2 non-uniques, the Builder and the Steward at the Wall has the 2 Ravens now, so plenty of 1-cost characters. And of course, the one thing that I like is that he works with Clydas. It's a Raven that you can kneel to steal some gold.
It's also good to point out the incredible combo. He does have the companion trait. I'm looking at you, Hot Pie. Kneel an Old Bear Raven, reduce, and then return to head. amazing plays.
Yeah, you can do that, or just play Clydas and move gold to your.
Yeah.
What does Clydas do? He moves gold to your own gold pool. So, and another one was the corn event, corn. That
Yeah.
needs a raven as well,
Yeah.
or a steward. So basically, if you're playing that, you might have stewards in your deck. So
Yeah.
easy enough to trigger, and the messenger ravens. But this is another one. So you need it to force the opponent to satisfy a claim of one challenge type.
Yeah, I might work more on that All Bear Mormont deck that I did run, because it was a lot of fun, and it worked with ravens and stewards, and actually, did some damage when it could. And I think that this raven will allow that deck to work.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's ways to give renown in Night's Watch, and you have the Lord Commander as well. So Old Bird and Mormont can take those attachments. So in a Cohort deck, Marius plays it to Walter and Jon Snow with the Lions, and he puts Queen's Guard on. Well, that was the deck that won the Polish championship last year before Queen's Guard was put on the restricted list in a pod with Cohort. Basically, that was the reason to stop that particular deck and that particular interaction. And I was just thinking if you could Walter on this guy, because you have an infection stand, you can stand him twice per phase, and with Cohort, fairly easy to find that long claw to give him renown and the Lord Commander, and you can still switch the 3 cost attachments. You can do the catapult at the wall, and the Seal of the Hand. He has the printed Lord trait as well. So maybe Walter on this guy in that way.
Yeah.
Either one of the two, basically, if you're just going for the renown, but this one, the 6 coster, also puts steals some characters, puts them into play under your control.
I'd like to see more decks with Old Bear Raven, and Old Bear. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, haven't seen him played probably in years, I would say.
Yeah.
And then the third one, I think this is the only event in this entire pack. You Know Nothing, famous words.
Yep.
And this is a challenger section. Until the end of the phase, each non-army character an opponent controls loses all keywords. So all keywords means all instances of all keywords. So when you play this, no more keywords.
Yeah, even if they're
phase.
Even if they're gained, it's not all printed keywords. It's gained or printed.
Yeah, so this is a little bit complicated to understand. So if you're playing this and then stuff happens later, for instance, a character would gain the army trait because this one targets non-army characters. That doesn't really retroactively help you. It doesn't stop this lasting effect from happening on that character. And also if for instance, if control changes, it will not affect this event. But yeah, gaining a keyword later, for instance, if a character has renown, loses renown with this event, and then it gains it later, it will still not have renown, because you can basically imagine as if you are losing an infinite number of instances of that keyword. So
yeah,
but the one that is not affected is the assault, because it's only on army characters. So that's the one they cannot take away.
Yeah, I'm not too certain what deck this fits in, but it is a bit of a silver bullet. That'll when it hits, it hits hard.
Yeah, it takes renown basically in a stall deck you could stall a little bit better if there wasn't that threat of Renown Rush. It takes Stealth, it helps you defend the wall, it takes Intimidate, that helps you. But then, not sure. I think the wall deck's pretty set in those, let's say that list of builders with the Masons and the Halder and all the attachments that come with that. I think they're not looking really for this to take keywords away. They're not really that bothered.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting one for sure, and could be game changing. Okay, so let's have a look at Stark. So Stark is one of the factions that did not receive an 8-cost army in this pack, and the reason is it already has one.
King Rob's host, I believe.
That's the one. So that's a character that moves power. Basically, it steals power, let's say, and if there's a war plot revealed, it can take 2 power, but it hasn't really seen all that much play so far. And if you compare it with these recently released armies for each faction, I think it is comparable if it had Assault, but without the keyword it's a little bit worse, because well, it's an 8-cost character. If you're playing Stark, you're not going to pay 8 for this. If you can pay 6 for Robb Stark, for instance, it's just not all that efficient. And to compensate, they have the Blackfish, and incidentally, Blackfish gives an intrigue icon to King Robb's host and other Stark armies. And it also has printed Renown and Stealth. I think that's the first card list that has printed Renown and Stealth.
Yeah. I think I really like this Blackfish. Similar to other cards in this pack, it fits a very, very specific style of deck. That's obviously being a deck with Stark armies. On its own, if you completely ignore that passive, the army passive, it's still a pretty decent card. You know, 2 icons, 5 strength, renowned stealth is always welcome. But when you bundle him in an army deck, for example, like a Battle of the Trident deck, he is by far that key card that you need. So I don't think there are any Stark armies with intrigue icons, are there?
No, not with the printed icon.
Yeah, so he's always getting value in that type of deck, which is good to see.
I think Stark possibly has some of the most underwhelming armies that never really see play. But they have a non-kneeler, for instance. Vanguard of the North is in a Trident deck where you would have war plots. It's a non-kneeler in the military challenge, and then if it has an intrigue icon as well, it's certainly useful. And well, the other armies, you could possibly have them participate in the challenges where they already have the icon in the military or in the power. It's doesn't need to be the intrigue challenge, but it helps if you're lacking the icons, obviously. And Stark, ever since the game was released, I think has struggled with the intrigue icons. Even if you play against Crossing, the most likely icon that they can be left without is that intrigue icon, if they don't get one of those 3 or 4 characters that they have.
Yeah. And it's also good to point out that Blackfish is a commander. So on his own, he will be working with Battle of the Trident. Obviously, you'd want to see armies with him as well, so you'd also have those working for you. So I think he is a very good fit for that type of deck, or a deck where you just obviously just have armies in it.
Yeah, they kind of have different themes that they work in. You have a House Mormont army, you have a House Tully army, you have this Vanguard from the Corset, so it's a bit of a weird mix, but yeah, you need to think about it a little bit.
Yeah, and he also works very well with the next card, Brendan's Outriders. Like that's another army that actually synergizes very well with him, especially his Intrigue Icon passive.
Yeah, looks a little blank at first glance. It's just a military icon, 2 for 2, and then when you read the passive text, so while you control a Deliverance location, Brendan's Outriders gains stealth, and while you control a commander character, Brendan's Outriders gains a power icon, and if that commander character is the Blackfish, he gives them an Intrigue icon as well, so suddenly it's a 2 for 2 Tricon, and possibly stealth, and of course Assault is printed on the card as well. I just wonder if there are any other commanders that you could potentially play in Stark.
I was actually looking at that recently. A few of the other armies have Bestow, so I was thinking Vargo Hope might actually be a decent choice as another commander to help fuel those Bestow armies. So you could possibly see him giving Brendan Outriders a power icon.
Yeah, so Bear Island Host makes a non-kneeler if you discard gold from it, and Host of the Riverlands can gain additional power, so these are pretty good.
Yeah.
And this is House Tully as well, if you're going for that trade specifically. There are synergies with House Tully that haven't really been explored in recent times.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we talk about the confusion with the trades or skip it?
It might be good to mention.
So this is a bit of a mess, the Riverlands and just simply Riverlands trade I can show you here. So you can see in the deck builder that both trades exist, so Riverlands and the Riverlands, and basically I think the Riverlands was supposed to be the trade on all of these cards. It's on Riverrun, the Tumblestone and the Twins, and then simply Riverlands is in at the Crossroads, and well, I can't say for a fact, but I'm pretty sure that this was supposed to be the same trade. There is no gameplay reason why these trades should be different, so it's just something that was overlooked when proofreading these cards, and now we're stuck with two trades, and the Citadel has the same thing. One of the cards has the Citadel trait, and the others simply have Citadel. And well, so this hasn't been officially ruled yet. I've asked about this way back in June, before this card even existed. What would happen if there was card text that referred to one of these traits that have two different versions, and this hasn't been officially ruled, but since this is a mistake, I think the most sensible solution is to simply have when card text refers to one of those traits, it automatically refers to the other as well. They should be the same, really.
Yeah, because there's just no real reason for the word "the" to make any difference in traits. I just feel like it was quite clearly just something that they missed.
It would be really weird to word it. It could have been worded, for instance, while you control a Riverlands or the Riverlands location, but that just sounds so stupid.
Yeah.
So hopefully that doesn't cause any problems, and hopefully there is some sort of official ruling from the GOT organization about this. Not sure if there will be. I'm not holding my breath actually, since It's been a while since I originally brought this up, but yeah. So I guess best make sure if you're playing. I don't know if anyone is going to be playing this card with the inn at the crossroads specifically. Maybe because you would like to get stealth, so maybe you put these locations in. Certainly works okay with River Run and what was the other one? The Tumblestone. So maybe
Tumblestone, yeah.
So just double check how this will be ruled in the event you want to play in or whatever.
Yep.
Okay, and then something completely different here with Greywind, the attachment version. That's the one that was still missing. This is a 3-coster, goes on unique Starks, and attached character gains stealth, has the usual action that can move it to a different character if you pay 1 gold once per phase. And then the main ability here is the interrupt. When the effects of a triggered character ability would initiate, return a direwolf card to your hand to cancel those effects. Limit once per phase. So when we compare this to something like Alchemist's Guildhall, which clearly is a great card, what do you think?
I think this is very interesting. It's sort of like begging you and asking you to put in the Wolf's Wood. And, you know, you have Farlan in there as well to help that happen. I believe that's his name, Farlan. Returning a direwolf card to your hand, it just to cancel specific character abilities. It gives out those direwolf decks something else to work with, because I feel like unfortunately they've just been lacking a little bit. I think this card will be useful. I think it might possibly be a little bit too expensive. However, you can fetch it with the direwolf plot as well, so that's good to know. But overall, I think I like it. It adds a little bit more to those direwolf decks that other Stark decks. The other Stark decks have preventative measures. This one has a very clear counter to characters.
Yeah, so if you're using this interrupt to return Greywind itself, it's a 3-cost ability basically every time. The Guildhall costs you 2 when it returns back to Shadows, and this one is 3. There are some cheaper direwolves if you want to do it with a 1-coster, for instance. But, well, you are losing the character version then if you're playing this one in a direwolf deck. And it's a pretty good one, especially with the direwolf Bran that can stand it, the 5-cost Greywind.
It is possible though. You are always able to run both though, and this is something that I'd love to test at some point. Running both and something like Skagos, for example.
Yeah, you could
if
do
you, yeah, if you feel like you need something that cancel, you can sacrifice the character Greywind, fetch this, and put this into play Knelt. It being Knelt doesn't really mean much. Still does everything it does. You've then got a cancel, and then Skagos can obviously be repeated to if you want to get the other Greywind back next turn, you can do it again. So I'd be interested. I think that mixing the characters and attachments isn't always the worst idea, but I get what you mean. If you're working with this 3-cost Greywind, you probably want to have one or the other. Yeah. Plus, the stealth can't be ignored. Stealth is always useful on a unique character.
Yeah, you can swap it around a little bit, but you need to do that before challenges. Now, if you're doing Skagos, that's an interesting one. So, it's a little bit difficult to get stuff out of the discard pile for Stark. For instance, Targaryen just has the Marinese market that works on any card. But Stark needs to work a little bit, but it does reset the limit, so it's a limit, it's not a max, and if Greywind leaves play, either by his own ability, if you just return him to hand for the interrupt and put him back, you can do the cancel again in the same phase. So for instance, if you go second in marshalling, you can just cancel a reducer or something like that. If you have enough gold, and you can put him back in the same phase. And I guess the one card that really likes to be returned to hand is the summer character, because I think that's the only direwolf that really has any kind of interplay effect that you would want to repeat. So definitely, if you can afford it, it also costs 3. So if you can, if you have summer on the board and the Greywind attachment, you can return this guy back to hand to get the repeated trigger.
Yeah.
But I think kind of like Greyjoy and Night's Watch, Stark decks have been really sticking to that same old strategy in recent times, either played with Crossing or with Filthy to get the challenges phase rush, basically. And this is a completely different control type of card that I don't know, I'm a little bit pessimistic that this will see play, but I hope it does.
I hope it does too. I think that at the very least, if there's more, maybe more direwolves that are outside of the ones that we know, you know, Greywind, Summer, all them. If there's more direwolf characters that come out, I see this getting more play in a dedicated direwolf deck. Not even just for the fact that you can return them to hand. It's just because it doesn't mean that you need the Greywind character for that direwolf deck to work. It means that you still have other characters covered, and then you can put this direwolf attachment in, and you won't be lacking direwolf characters to do a lot of the other effects that you want. So I think it's a card that it'll grow like a fine wine over time.
Yeah. I think all of the direwolves now have a character and an attachment version, except for Lady. I think Lady character is still missing, and then obviously any kind of non-unique is possible, like Wolves of the North, Roaming Wolfpack, or Direwolf Pup. This can be always released more of these. Okay.
So I might give me one moment. My headphones are about to run out of battery.
Okay, sure.
Like, just give me one moment to just replace all that.
Okay, so then we have Targaryen, another faction that hasn't received an 8-cost army here because it has a previous one. Let's see if I can remember. It's the Trucky Outriders. So this one is very plain. It doesn't have any kind of ability. It just reduces itself for the number of the Trucky characters you control. So in a dedicated deck, you might control something like 5 Dothrakis, and this comes in for 3, which actually isn't that far away from some of the previous abilities we had originally on these armies. I think most of them had some kind of self-reduction planned originally, but then they were replaced by some slightly more interesting abilities. And I think, okay, this one, the Trucky Outriders, doesn't really see play, and you would not play it for 8 gold in any deck that isn't trying to reduce the cost. Without the assault keyword especially, it doesn't really compare with the 8-cost armies from this pack. But then Targaryen does get a commander. So Sir Barristan Selmy, Commander Knight with renown, and he has an ability that can do 2 things. After you win a challenge in which he is participating, you discard 1 card from your hand to either stand each defending knight character, which can include himself since he has the trait, or raise the claim value on your revealed plot card by 1 until the end of the challenge. limit twice per phase. I think that second one is the one that will be used most of the time. So just to clarify, immediately you cannot choose to discard multiple cards from your hand to keep raising the claim. You can only react in a particular challenge once, but he is limit twice per phase, so you could raise claim in 2 separate challenges. And of course that cost of discarding cards from your hand to do interesting stuff hasn't really proven to be too damaging for Targaryen. They're happy to do it, and they cheat as well. And Miss Sunday is always in hand. Every single time.
I see this. I like this card, especially the art. I think the art's beautiful. This card on its own, I think it's very versatile. Obviously, defense and attack, you're covered. It's also a really good target for Dragon Egg. So you were saying before, like anything that can stand in Targaryen, or in Greyjoy, for example, slap inside on that. You've got Queen's Guard. This is almost an inbuilt Queen's Guard on the defense. Otherwise, you've got a bunch of claim raise techniques to go on the attack, and you know, it's just a really nice, really well balanced card. I feel the renown is a lovely bonus too.
Yeah, so standing knights, unless you're using a banner, is not really a thing in Targaryen to stand multiple characters. I think Ser Jorah is the only other knight that can be played. There are a couple of neutral ones as well. So basically it's just self-stand most of the time. And then the other one, So Queen's Guard on him also is an option if you want to raise the claim twice. But maybe in a cohort deck this could be a Voltron target, because you could get insight on him and stand on him quite easily, and he has printed renown as well. And I think Targaryen can include multiple characters in a cohort deck that could potentially be Voltron targets. I guess you have to commit to Daenerys if you're doing that, but if you're doing other stuff, you could have this guy or Khal Drogo or Daario Naharis, the renowned characters basically.
Yeah,
they all work the same.
And you can definitely do quite some damage if you have, for example, like Drogo, Khal Drogo on the field. Having 2 military challenges with 2 claim each is, it's 4 claim that your opponent has to deal with. He's got a lot that he can do.
And a big body himself. It's 6 strength.
Yeah.
And of course, not to be underestimated, the power challenge as well. To have a 2 claim swing, that's useful as well.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have an assault army, a smaller one for Targaryen Mother's Men. It's only cost 2, and it has a reaction after an opponent's character is killed by a card effect. Put Mother's Men into play from your discard pile. This is similar wording to previous cards. The Rhaegal, one of the dragons, this 5-coster, has a similar triggering condition after an opponent's character is killed by a card effect. And then you have Freedmen, which come into play from your discard pile after you win by 5 strength as the attacking player. So it's a mix of these 2 cards basically. And okay, this rules interaction actually is quite interesting to me. I didn't know about it before I did this research, that any kind of claim replacement or effects that originate from claim being applied don't count as a card effect for the purposes of this. So if you're using Miri Mazdur and you're killing something, it doesn't count as a character being killed by a card effect somehow, which is I don't think many people would think that instinctively that it works that way.
Yeah.
But this is actually an old ruling because Regal has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, so another character that's you can cheat into play, but then it doesn't have that much board presence. So I think this one depends on how useful Assault proves to be, and especially targeting the small locations. I think in a mirror match, Targaryen actually is one of the factions that has useful ones because you could target Plaza of Pride and Astapor with this. I think that's probably the best faction for the really small cost locations to target with Assault.
Yeah, I don't really think the assault on him is going to be used too much, but it is nice to see it there at the very least. So they have a very small option. I think the ability itself is just very useful for the deck that it's meant for. Burn decks will probably just have an easy 3 copy of him. It's a very very easy target for consuming flames.
Yeah, he comes straight back.
Yeah, just put it's sort of like in the Sunday situation, except you are working a little bit harder for it. But I think it does find a spot in those decks. Outside of that, though, it might be useful here or there. But obviously, you need those specific kill effects for it to be useful enough.
Yeah, decent trades as well in army will be useful in the future with the agenda and ally also for Dario Naharis if you want to assault trigger assault though. Yeah, as you say, I think that's not going to be that useful to find 2 small locations that you can do something, and then how are you putting it into a non-military challenge, so
yeah,
don't see that happening. And then Blood of the Dragon kills it as well if you're putting this in a burn deck.
Yep.
And the third one is an interesting one. So Griffin's Roost, one of the best arts I think in this entire pack. Beautiful.
Oh, hands down, yeah.
Another stronghold location. House Connington as well. Currently that doesn't do anything, but who knows. So while you control John Connington, he gains a power icon. Guess we can have a quick look. So this is John has renown, and that's the one icon he is missing. He's a 5 strength character, so pretty good. And he does something when he comes out of shadows, which usually suggests you want to repeat it, but that's not really a targeting at the moment. So you could play with John Connington on the board with this, and then the ability is related to shadows as well. Basically it's a copy of Assault from the Shadows. After you win a power challenge, you choose a card in your hand to put into shadows, and if it doesn't have the printed keyword, it will gain Shadow X. X is the printed cost, and is the faction card as well. So we know for sure that sticking stuff into shadows that isn't supposed to be there is a strong interaction, because Assault still works, especially in Targaryen. It's one of their favorite agendas still, just to put burn events mostly into shadows, and then they have a few characters with printed shadows as well. They have Aegon and they have the 2 assassins that are pretty useful in combination with burn.
And that location that reduces the strength if you have more cards in shadow.
Yes, Dragon Pit, exactly. Yep. So that's a strong interaction for sure, and well, but what do you do with this?
I think there's a lot to do. The clear intention of it is to synergize with John, as he puts a non-event card with printed cost 4 or lower into play. You can use it to put something into shadow, win a power challenge, put something into shadows, and then put John Con into play from shadows to then put the card you just put into play into shadows into play. I think the important thing to note with this location, and possibly the part that may or may not break it is the fact that it's non-loyal. So it opens up the door to a lot of banner dragon decks that already utilize Aegon quite a bit. Griffin's Roost will probably find a good spot in those decks as well. I think the faction kneel does put it into check quite a bit, as that is a very common cost. But I still think it's definitely worth it for the two cost slot.
Yeah, so Assault also needs the faction card, so that can be combined, and Lannister is the usual partner when it comes to Shadows. It has that clever feint that needs the faction kneel, and also usually you will have the Iron Bank will have its due in Shadows deck, so it's a bit of a competition there for the faction card nil.
Yep.
Interesting trigger as well after win a power challenge, so it's something you need to be able to do. The Targaryen cards, let's have a look if you can search for that. Targaryen cards with Shadow. Yeah, so there are a few with the power icon. Actually, a couple only reference Shadows. He's there as Laura can acceptably more work with Shadows, but don't have the keyword themselves. And then mostly the combination here is intrigue and military for Targaryen, but obviously no need to go all in. You can put other stuff into this deck as well.
Yeah.
Maybe just that Dragon Pit synergy, just put stuff in, because that's what Salt basically does. It sticks one into Shadows each round to get that constant effect, and then combines it with Burn. You could do something similar here as well.
Yeah, it might mean that you can do a the same style of deck without that agenda. You definitely can't do both though, as you mentioned. They both require a faction kneel, so it'd be interesting what people can produce with this, but I think it has a lot of potential.
Yep. Okay. And then let's end things with Tyrell. So we have the Red Wine Fleet. This is slightly different than the other ones. It doesn't have any keyword apart from the usual Assault and no attachments. And it gives Paxter Red Wine the military and the power icon and the commander trait, so I think that's possibly, well, I'm quite sure actually that it's the most any card has received from another card.
I feel like it is, yeah.
Basically gaining 3 things from it just by title, and well, it's questionable how useful that is. You can the existing version of Paxter, he is a prominent character, so who knows, there might be another one, but the existing one has no keywords, so you can give it icons, okay, and the commander trait is useful for the agenda, but it's not going to suddenly mean that Paxter is great just by having this on the board. And then the other part is a reaction after a House Red Wine card you control is knelt, gain 1 gold, limit 3 times per round. So this, I think, needs a little look at which Red Wine cards exist.
Yeah.
So not that many. There is an event that cannot be knelt, and then you have characters that kneel in challenges. So you have the Arbor Knight, you have this Mera, Mina Red Wine, Paxter, you have this army itself, and then the Hober and Horace, which are 2 characters that themselves have reactions to kneeling, so they do like to kneel. But if you're doing that, of course, you need some use for the challenges phase gold, because you're not getting it to marshal stuff. But there is a way to get it. You have the Arbor Vineyard, so this is the vineyard, is that how you pronounce that?
Yep, Arbor Vineyard, yeah.
Vineyard, okay. This kneels by its own ability. It gains 2 gold if there are more summer plots than winter plots revealed, and if you're gaining an additional gold, that's 3 gold just by triggering the vineyard, and that's the one you can get in the marshalling phase.
Yep.
And if you're not doing the vineyards, if you're doing the other cards that kneel in challenges, you need the jumping in with the spies and stuff that Tyrell does. So
yeah. So there's a few other interesting interactions that I noticed here. I was running this with in a Battle of the Trident deck with the new Randall Tarly. Things that I just didn't notice until I started playing. A way to make money before challenges phase. Forced March actually triggers it. So kneeling 3 Arbor Knights, for example, gets you 3 gold in the plot phase. Additionally, a thing I found useful there, outside of just using it for ambush, was in the challenges phase was the Arbor Knight itself and Desmira Redwine all work off paying 1 gold to do something useful. Arbor Knight probably being, I would say, more useful than Desmira. This gives you, pretty much will give you that 2 or 3 gold in that challenges phase to use those abilities, which is very, very useful. And really, it genuinely surprised me how much use I got out of that reaction.
Yeah, I know that there were worries that this was underpowered, but then in testing it proved to be quite good, actually.
Yeah, definitely. I think previously it didn't have a limit as well. I think the limit 3 is very fair.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah.
If you do it 4 times, you could, I guess, if you have all the whole set.
You could definitely try. Yeah.
Characters.
Well, you do have the Arbor Knight, and the Arbor Marketplace would always also trigger it. So that's 3 non-unique each. Non-unique cards each that can trigger fleet. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another one that works in challenges as well. Yeah, so the Tyrell decks of recent times actually have mostly settled on those Kingsguard interactions now, either with Banner Lion or with the White Book, because it's just simply proven to be really strong currently. And the other stuff has kind of disappeared for the moment, but it definitely was strong before. I think with the spies and Behold Our Bounty and stuff like that was quite interesting. Even the new Randall Tarly was interesting when he came out. So this is definitely, I think, something that should be addressed by the restricted list. And if it hits the Kingsguard deck a little bit, I think we'll see a lot more different Tyrell stuff being played.
Yeah. I actually think that Tyrell will be one of the factions that'll work very well with Battle of the Trident. Primarily because you have that Randall Tarly, which can stand army characters. And they have an okay range of army characters to work with. Doing a challenge with the Redwine Fleet and then standing it with Randall to get a second 8 cost, 8 strength assault. Plus it's giving you gold. It's a lot of stuff happening with very few cards. So I'd like to see how that turns out.
Yeah, and certainly Tyrell is not struggling for the icons that much. It can do any of the 3. Basically, it has. Does it have an intrigue army? I think it does.
Yep, it has the High Guard and Honor Guard. I think it is, or something along those lines.
Yeah, the honor guard with ambush that is reduced by the rich locations.
Yep.
And then it has fairly decent armies with the usual military and power strength as well. And actually these the ridge decks are quite strong if you really concentrate on this. It's not that difficult at all to get a crazy number of locations. And then you have a couple of cards that really benefit from that.
Exactly, yeah. You got Wardens of the Reach and High Guard and Honor Guard, and then Randall himself, giving you a lot of power from those reach locations. A lot of strength.
Yep. And then they have 2 locations as well in this pack. And these are pretty interesting. We have Long Table. Each small council character you control gets +1 strength. And reduce the cost of the first small council or spy character you marshal, ambush, or bring out of shadows each phase by 1. So the small council characters are not that common. It's a trait that is spread out through different factions. There are we have Eddard in Stark, we have quite a few Lannisters and some Baratheons, and then you have 4 characters in faction that have that trait, so marshalling a small council character takes some work, but if you put all of these 4 in, you could do it. And certainly the spies are quite easy to ambush in Tyrell. So I think what you're really looking for with this one is to get 2 gold back from it. Basically, you do 1 in marshalling and 1 in challenges. I think any other phase is pretty useless to have gold in if you're bringing stuff out of shadows in different phases. But just as an economy location, to have 2 gold from a 3-coster in Tyrell is not good enough, because they have the Arbor and Redwine Straits, and even High Tower gains a lot of gold, so they definitely don't need that. I think what makes the difference will have to be that passive power, passive ability to give plus strength to small council characters.
Yeah, I think this is one that will, on its own, won't do too much, but when you combine it with with the other location, but also if you want to combine it with Many-Faced God, that's when it actually starts to make a real huge impact in that deck, where it becomes more valuable than the other economy locations.
Yeah, it stacks with that reduction, so it will reduce something by 2. Which, of course, in that particular deck, you cannot play Kingdom plots in that, so that's useful.
Yeah. But yeah, not too much to say about this one. There are, like, it definitely works well with what's his name, Alton Merryweather. But yeah, there's a few small council characters from Tyrell that it will work with. But yeah.
Yeah, and one of them, the Mattis Rowan, is an interesting card that hasn't ever really seen any play. But he has a location here that he could work with. The Golden Grow is another the rich location. It has an interesting action. You can kneel it or a small council character, so basically it works with in the same kind of deck. To choose another card you own with equal or lower printed cost, stand that card and take control of it. Limit twice per round. So, okay, the interesting part is taking control of it. I think possibly the players that just look for efficiency will try to get some kind of easy stand from this. That's the reliable one that you can always use. But that business of giving characters away with Mattis and then taking them back is something that really hasn't been explored when this mechanic was introduced. I think I've only played this character in one deck, the one that tries to give teach on the stories to the opponent when time expires and then wins by default. That worked once in something like 8 games, I think.
Yeah, I know the other scenario I've seen this work with, this Golden Grove work with, is in at the crossroads, drawing 3 cards, giving it to your opponent in the dominance phase, and then stealing it right back using Golden Grove.
That's nice.
So that's nice to see. Tyrell don't necessarily need that draw, but it's nonetheless an interesting interaction.
Yeah, anytime
and
you
it
can
also
cheat this is quite nice, even with Lay Waste and with King's Landing and the various discard effects. It's quite good. It draws 3. 3 is a good draw if you can repeat it and avoid giving it away to the opponent.
Definitely, yeah. And I also think that Golden Grove decks, and I guess the same thing with Long Table, might give Appointed, the attachment Appointed, a little bit more use. I've been seeing a few people in testing who were utilizing Appointed onto some characters who wanted to kneel, and doing some useful things there.
Yeah, played this against this just a few hours ago. My opponent played Appointed, and then even the council consents to stand the characters with this attachment. Yeah, so small concentrate coming out, and the spies supported in this pack, which is something that we've seen a lot in recent times, but so far hasn't really caught on. I
think it will soon. It's just that it hasn't been supported for so long that now that it's getting support, it just needs to catch up to the other Tyrell decks. So hopefully that happens soon, and I'm excited when that does. Really, I'll be excited.
Yeah, I think that was the last one. Unless we've missed something.
I don't believe we have. I think that's everything.
Okay, so this was not really meant to be a review that ranked cards from best to worst or anything like that. But we can still maybe just have a quick opinion what you think is the best and the worst card in this set.
Yeah. What would you vote as your best?
Bit
of a tough choice, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there are some that will be played for sure, but I think it has to be Lord Anders's House. I think that's going to be played for sure, and someone will find a way to abuse this, I think.
Yep.
That's the way I think they'll.
Yeah, I think there might, even with future releases or current releases, there'll be a way to break this in some form. I think I kind of agree with you there. I'm also thinking great ranging. To me, in regards to strength, I just see every time I've seen it played, it's been the centerpiece. It's controlled the game, and it wasn't too difficult to stand it either and reuse it. So I think that obviously won't be really used in builder decks, but outside of that, I think it's very playable. And Night's Watch aren't lacking for the economy to play it either, I don't think.
Yeah, it's very for the players who just want consistency. This basically just gets you all the keywords and efficiency. So this is one that I think we'll see play.
A question for you: what would you vote as your most interesting card? One that you would may not be his strongest, but do you think is a well-designed card?
Well, okay. Summerhall, obviously, I've mentioned that I really like, but I think Fair Isle is an interesting design. It's seems when you read it, it seems useless or even detrimental if you're giving more cards back than you're taking in the first place. But I think this is something that brings cards into play that maybe we've forgotten about, that we haven't seen a lot. I think that's one of the best designs in this pack. along with Summerhall, which basically does a similar thing.
Yeah, I think in regards to best design, I think I'd probably give it to Summerhall too, just because it's very simple, but it's doing a lot, and it's boosting a theme that needs it. I do also I count and I love the design of Battle of the Trident. The agenda is very interesting to me because I get to play a lot of those plots that I never see, and it's really exciting when I make a really good play using retaliation. Sorry, not retaliate, reinforcements. Sorry, making a really good play with reinforcements, and the opponents doesn't know what that plot even is. But yeah, I think there's a lot of well-designed cards here.
Yeah, I know there are mixed opinions about this agenda. Some people have been complaining about it, and some people really like it. Personally, I'm not really one to go for the big characters and for the challenges phase game. Play more of the control stuff, but for sure this is interesting for the armies, and certainly something that is probably going to be supported in a few of the next releases as well.
Yeah, I hope there's more support for different deck styles, which I think is happening, which is good.
Okay, and on that note, so we can return to this plot one last time. So for the realm, as you can see, it reduces armies and strongholds as well, and this would be probably a good time to mention some of the future plans. So I can tell you that the next pack, it's titled Brand the Builder. That's most likely going to stay that way because a lot of the cards included in that deck are from that timeline, and they are some of the most notable strongholds in Westeros, and these are high cost locations that are going to benefit from this plot as well. And just before we talk about it, one thing. So originally Hear My Words was a 60 card pack, and this for the realm was supposed to be a 60 card pack as well, but it was split into two parts, and part of the reason for that was that securing art for the cards is a difficult and a long process, and works much faster and better with smaller releases, because basically most of the work is comes down to Flavio's efforts. Flavio is the person who is responsible for this new template that we've got, and for putting all the art on the cards, and he does most of the work when it comes to searching for art and asking for permissions and stuff like that. And I can just show you this.
He does incredible work, honestly.
In this forum, you can see these beautiful cards. So he really is, if there is someone who deserves the most credit for these new cards that have come out, I think Flavio's work is the most important and certainly appreciated. And I think this would be a good time to ask anyone if you are in some position to help, either as an artist or as a graphic designer or whatever, that you can help with in terms of getting these arts, so that the images can be secured for new cards. It would be much appreciated, because it should really be a larger team that works on that. I would say at least half a dozen people, so that things could go more smoothly, and that Flavio could get a little bit of a break. So if you can help in some way, you should get in touch. It would be appreciated.
Yeah, we're always looking for people who are able to relieve some of the stress of Fabio, and if you're able to, we're all welcome. Any help is welcome. It also means that if we did have more people, it wouldn't just need to always be 30 pack 30 card packs, due to the restrictions of finding art. But yeah.
Yeah, and possibly the person to get in touch with if you would like to help would be Stephen, because Stephen is our project leader basically for the following pack, the Brand Builder, and you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yep. So the Brand Builder pack, as you mentioned, is focused on strongholds. It's got a lot of really good, interesting mechanics that I'm looking forward to. Not really sure how much right now we can reveal, but I would just say get excited for some big locations. That's what I am excited for, and trying to make sure everything is opening up interesting deck interactions and game interactions, stuff that you don't usually see in the meta right now, at least, of these sort of decks. We'd love to see more people who can help us with art. I'm able to, you can contact me through Facebook, Stephen Patane, Patane, or on Discord, definitely Steve. I'd love to hear if you're able to help specifically with art, but even if it's just design team stuff, I don't bite. We're always looking for help, primarily with art, but anything helps, really.
Yeah, so basically we are in the very early stages, and I assume that like with the previous few packs, once the cards are ready, there will be another pack here listed, number 23 on ThronesDB.
Yeah.
You can see the provisional versions of the card and how they change through time. And of course there will be play testing events as well. We'll try to have a few of those, and everyone is welcome and encouraged to participate, because that's the best chance to basically affect the cards that come out.
Yeah, I can say we're working hard. Myself and Lucas working hard to implement these cards on the playtesting server. Once that is done, then we should be ready to reveal the first list of the first versions of these cards. But yeah, very early development right now. But yeah, I'm excited, really excited.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing the cards as well.
Yeah.
And playing with them, of course.
Yeah.
But first of all, of course, we'll need to play a bit with for the Realm cards, and certainly exciting times ahead with the likes of Summerhall.
Yeah, I've definitely been going through the Iron Throne and trying Battle of the Trident in different factions, and having a lot of fun. Definitely enjoying it. Weird interactions here and there that I didn't expect. Yeah.
So the next online event that you can play in, I think, I'm not sure when this review will be uploaded. Let's say I expect to upload it on Monday, so on Sunday the 28th there is Canadian Nationals. This is going to be held online, and it's at quite a reasonable time for Europeans as well. It starts, I think it's at 5 p.m. in Central Europe, and if you reach the final it should be something like 1 a.m. in the morning when the event ends. So I think everyone from North and South America and from Europe will be able to participate in that, and probably should participate in that if you can. Unfortunately, Stephen, I'm guessing you won't be able to make it in that time zone.
I really wish I could, but here down under in Australia, it's 3 a.m. on a Monday. And unfortunately, I work full time, so my boss wouldn't be very happy with me.
Yeah, and it's on Sunday as well, so if it was a Saturday event, you could cheat a little bit, but not on Sunday probably. Yeah,
that's all right. I'll make the next one.
Okay, so we'll put the link to that event in the description and all the other useful stuff as well, and hopefully we'll see you in that event.
Yeah,
if you can make it. Okay, so I think that's just about all there is to say. I think we've talked for 3 hours and a half now. Sorry about that, folks. And congratulations if you've reached this point of the review.
We thank you for listening to us.
And thanks again, Stephen, for joining me.
It's all good. I'll do it anytime.
All right. See you next time. Bye bye.